To open the streets to people walking, riding, scooting, and close the streets to car traffic just to drop off and pick up times. We know that a lot of schools in Merri-bek really struggle with congestion. We also know that a lot of families want to walk or ride to school, but the dangerous zones outside the school gates often push people away from making that choice. So it's really about just creating a really hyper-safe, sustainable, healthy space in front of schools.
It's been absolutely brilliant. The kids are loving coming to school on Tuesdays. There's a real vibe and a sense of, joy when we start the day together. Lots of families are starting to come back. Our student attendance has increased on the days that we have open streets, and also we have less lateness as well. So it's just been brilliant all around.
We don't normally walk, we normally drive, so it's a really good incentive to get parents that don't normally do it, doing it. Once we're out and walking, they really enjoy it. It's so much safer. The kids love coming in here, playing, drawing with chalk.
This has been probably the highlight. Parents are saying, wow, can we do this more often, which has been fantastic. To see the joy on the kids' faces and to hear them saying, wanting to ride their bikes and wanting to have a play on the street's been amazing.
We have a huge percentage of our students riding to school. You can just see how successful it is. We've got kids riding, parents coming along, just really enjoying themselves. And it's changed my thinking. For someone who drove to work, bought my own bike and riding to work each day, it's amazing.
It's a fun experience. I normally walk, but today everyone's doing it, so I might as well join in.
It's also an initiative that residents and the local community can take part in. We want to see people coming out, having a coffee, we want to see people talking to their neighbours, and it's been really fantastic to partner with Bicycle Network and the schools to run these initiatives and really see some healthy, happy street space.
Being part of Open Streets has been really exciting. We're interested in making people view their neighbourhood streets in a different way, being spaces for everyone and multi-use spaces, not just for throughways for cars.
And just listen to all this noise. It's great having everyone have so much fun around you and just being active. No, we're really stoked. We should happen every day.
This is very attractive for parents and kids to spend together. I think it's encouraging people to ride to the school.
I think it's definitely a good idea to get people active and getting people involved with the community. Because of this, it got a lot of me and my friends to ride to school every day. I get to see all my friends and talk to new people.
My name is Angelica Panopoulos and I'm your new Mayor of Merri-bek City Council. I'm a lifelong local. I've just finished uni, so I'm a law grad. I'm an activist and I've been a councillor for 2 years now. So today we are along the Moonee Ponds Creek in Glenroy, and this is somewhere where I've come ever since I was a little kid with my family, with my dog, down for walks by the creek and played in the park, and I've got lots of fun memories here. There's a lot to love about Merri-bek. I think the fact that we've got such a diverse, eclectic mix of people here who call this area home and who all care about this area is something that really sets us apart and makes me quite proud to be from this area. So my spare time's been a bit limited up until now. I do like just to see my friends, to relax, read a good book, and to get out and to see new things. It's hard to choose just one or two of my favourite places in Merri-bek. I think most important is wherever I am with my friends or my family and having a good time, that's where I like to be. Also had some great times just sitting in Coburg Mall and having chats with people, and so really anywhere where there's a bit of energy and a bit of life happening, I think it's quite fun to be around there. There's a few big challenges facing Merri-bek right now. In terms of broader challenges, I think we need to work together to bring the community with us on particular journeys, say to reconciliation, to other forms of equality that we need to have happen in our community. As the Mayor of Merri-bek, I hope to achieve a few things. I hope that first and foremost, we can make council seem a lot more accessible to people, and as though this isn't something that you have to wait until you're much older to do or until you've got X amount of years of work experience. I think making it quite clear to people that this is council, it belongs to you as much as it belongs to me, and so we should all get involved, and I really want that to be the overriding, message throughout this mayoral year.
Well, they did putting the solar panel on top of the roof. It looks beautiful, and what is important is knowing the help that it could for us for our energy sufficiency. I saw everyone here in our neighborhood is putting solar, so I said to myself, I will think about it. I will not lose anything, you know, so I choose to put it, and that makes a difference. It helps us when we receive the bill now. We saw the difference from the usual amount that we paid, so it went down, and I think, you know, it will help us, the money that is being not paid before, we can use it with other things. And I think the overall help of that solar being installed in our roof is really to save some money and also helping the climate change. And it will really make a difference for the earth, you know. In a way, it is helping us. So I will recommend, don't hesitate.
Chairperson for tonight's council meeting for planning and related matters. It's my pleasure to welcome you here to our meeting tonight. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're meeting on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and that we wish to acknowledge them as the traditional custodians of these lands and waterways, and would also like to pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and to all First Nations communities who significantly contribute to the life of this city. This council meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to council's website and Facebook. This recording will also be available as video on demand, and gallery attendees are advised that they will be recorded during the meeting. A reminder that as councillors, we will act in accordance with the Councillor Code of Conduct, which will support the principles of leadership and good governance that secures public confidence in the office of councillor. In the event of an emergency or a disruption, we may be required to take action to ensure the safety of attendees. For members of the gallery and councillors attending in person, please follow the directions issued by council staff and security officers. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. So I'd now like to introduce the councillors that we have in attendance. We've got Councillor Helen Davidson, the Deputy Mayor. Councillor James Conlon.
Hi everyone.
Councillor Helen Pavlidis. Good evening. Councillor Mark Riley.
Good evening.
Councillor Oscar Yildiz.
Good evening.
Councillor Sue Bolton. And I believe we might have Councillor Tapanos joining us shortly. And we've also got Councillor Adam Pulford online, who has been approved to attend via online means.
Hi everyone.
And that is Councillor Lambros Tapanos coming in right now. I'll also just introduce Phil Priest, the Group Manager of City Development, and we've also got members of the Urban Planning team around us. In regards to apologies and leaves of absence, so we've got a leave of absence that has been granted to Councillor Carly Hannon from the 6th of September to the 28th of September inclusive. Councillor Monica Hart is an apology, and she's also sought a leave of absence from the period of the 25th of September to the 2nd of October this year inclusive. Do I have a motion for Councillor Hart's leave of absence? Councillor Riley to move, Councillor Pavlidis to second. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. All right, so I'll now move on to disclosures of conflicts of interest. Councillors, are there any conflicts of interest to declare on any of our items tonight? No. All right. Yep. Do you want to? Yep.
With the 35 Pentridge Boulevard, if I've got family living in Pentridge, is that a potential conflict? Not really. Oh, Troy. Sorry, Troy, I've got family that live in Pentridge. That 35 Pentridge Boulevard, it shouldn't be a conflict. They don't live next door to that property, but live not too far. No. Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Great. No conflicts of interest for this council meeting then. Okay, so we're up to the confirmation of minutes from our previous meeting. Councillors, could I please have a motion for the confirmation of the minutes of the council meeting for planning and related matters held on the 23rd of August 2023, just subject to amending Councillor Pavlidis' final leave of absence being from the 24th of August to the 24th of September. Councillor Davidson to move, Councillor Yildiz to second. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. So before we move on to the reports for consideration, I'll just outline how this council meeting for planning and related matters will run this evening. For the item in relation to a planning permit application, firstly, the relevant planner will introduce the report and the officer's recommendations. Secondly, I'll then give objectors the opportunity to make their submission. And then after this time, the applicant will be given the opportunity to speak. If you're making a submission, please clearly state your name for the record. You're requested to present your viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the planning application. Please don't repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on relevant issues and points not previously raised. If you're opposed to the planning application, would you please inform the meeting why you're opposed and suggest an alternative approach which would satisfy your concerns? Please use this opportunity to focus on your concerns rather than matters of detail in the officer's report. Please note that there is a limit of 3 minutes for each objector and for the permit applicant, but as the chairperson, I do reserve the right to increase or to reduce the time available to any speaker. So we've got 4 reports this evening, and if we've got if we can have agreement from councillors, given we've got a large number of people that wish to speak on item 5.4, which is the Hope Street application, I'll just see if we can move that to the top of our agenda. Great. Thanks, councillors. So first up is 5.4, and that's units 1, 2, 3 and 4 at 17 to 19 Hope Street, Brunswick. And 17 to 19 Hope Street, Brunswick, planning application MPS/2022/701. Yep. Is there...
Thank you, Mayor. I've just heard from the permit applicant that they're waiting on a couple of people to attend on the basis that they thought they were going to be last.
Okay. Look, I'm happy to have it as the regular order. I just thought if people wanted to go home sooner, it might be easier that way. But all right. Well, look, I think it wasn't super clear, but if I'm happy to take this back to the regular order if people are happy to be sitting in the chamber for perhaps a bit longer, or in the gallery, sorry, for a bit longer. Thanks, Vida.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, so we will go back to our regular order, councillors. And so as I scroll up, that is 5.1, which is 1 to 6/11 Logan Street in Glenroy. Planning a permit application MPS/2023/125. Any conflicts of interest to disclose? If not, I'll move to Ryan Hay, planning coordinator, to present the report.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is an application at 11 Logan Street, Glenroy, and it's proposing the use and development of the land for a childcare centre and the display of business identification signage. The site's located approximately 700 metres east of Pascoe Road. It's located on the western side of Logan Street. It's currently occupied by 6 single-storey units, and located opposite the site is the Glenroy Central Primary School, Glenroy Central Kindergarten and the Glenroy College further east of the site. The remaining context of Logan Street is residential. It's a view from the subject site, 2 of the single-storey dwellings fronting the street with 2 crossovers connected to Logan Street and a low front fence. There's the school located to the east of the site on the opposite side of Logan Street, and this is the drop-off zone and car parking area for the primary school. These are the dwellings located to the north and to the south of the subject site, just single-storey residential dwellings. In terms of the planning controls, this site's located in the general residential zone, and the relevant provisions for this application is also the signage provision, and that's the public use zone, which is where the school is located on the opposite side of Logan Street. The strategic policy setting for this particular site is in the incremental housing growth area. In terms of its location, it's approximately 600 metres from the Glenroy Railway Station, and the site is in close proximity to the Glenroy Activity Centre, which is shown with the orange boundary in the map included in this slide. The general residential zone has a maximum building height of 11 metres and 3 storeys. The proposal is seeking a change of use from residential to a childcare centre. It includes a 2-storey building with a maximum height of 8.89 metres and a total floor area of 845 square metres. It has a maximum capacity of 118 children, and the operating hours are Monday to Friday, 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. There are 25 car parking spaces provided for the development, so therefore we're not seeking a car parking reduction as part of this proposal. And there's also 4 on-site bicycle spaces provided as well. And as I said earlier, this is for including two business identification signage as part of this application. During public consultation, there were 18 objections received, and that was from 9 different properties. It's 2 from this property to the south and 9 from the, I guess you'd call it the school area. And then there's a further 7 additional objectors located outside of this map. The key issues that were raised in the objections were car parking, traffic generation, and road and pedestrian safety, and the suitability of the land use. A planning information and discussion meeting occurred on the 6th of June of this year and was attended by 3 objectors. In terms of the key considerations with this application, the car parking provision, and this includes 25 car parking spaces which meets the car parking requirement. It also includes 4 bicycle spaces, and the site also has good access to public transport and pedestrian routes. For traffic and road safety, the drop-off and pick-up times would typically occur outside of the school hours, so that will assist in avoiding traffic conflicts and congestion in Logan Street. And it's also recommended that the front fence proposed be lowered in height to ensure pedestrian visibility for vehicles exiting the site. The land use is considered appropriate as the childcare centre would be accessible to a large residential catchment and is situated in a mini education precinct with the school, college and kindergarten nearby. There are also considered to be no detrimental amenity impacts on nearby residents from the use and development of the land. In regards to the neighbourhood character and design, officers are recommending a condition to improve the presentation of the development to the street by requiring additional screening to the undercroft parking area. So in conclusion, given the strong alignment with strategic planning policy, it is recommended that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit be issued for the proposal, subject to the recommended conditions that ensure a respectful design response of the facade and the undercroft car park area, and adequate design of car parking spaces and the access way. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ryan. So we've got one objector who's indicated that they wish to speak. So we'll see if we've got Megan Hannon online. Great, thanks. Hi, Megan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Great, you've got 3 minutes for your objection.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address the meeting on this important matter. My name is Megan Hannon, and I am here on behalf of the Glenroy Central Primary School Council. We oppose the application on traffic, parking and safety grounds, both during the construction phase and the subsequent potential ongoing daily operations of the proposed centre. Logan Street is the main access point for our school. As has been noted, Logan Street already experiences traffic and parking congestion during school drop-off and pick-up times, and we are concerned that this development would make that traffic and congestion even worse. Logan Street is a narrow residential street with substantial local and school traffic and through traffic from the busy Glenroe Road to Melbourne Avenue and Hilton Street. I can testify from personal parental experience that school parents can wait for up to 20 minutes at a time in standstill traffic trying to get in and out of the school pick-up and drop-off bay. Cars often get stuck, unable to pass in either direction, and school staff have to stand in the middle of the road and help solve traffic snarls. This creates an unsafe environment for all road and amenity users, from motorists to cyclists to pedestrians to school staff. Even a small increase in traffic will have a significant knock-on effect. Just one construction truck parked on the street would bring drop-off and pick-up to a total halt. Just one extra car per minute during a 20-minute standstill would add up to a minimum of another 20 cars jammed and queuing back onto Glenroe Road or up into Melbourne Avenue. Crucially, there are not currently any viable alternatives to using Logan Street as the main school access point. The only other access point at the rear of the school, Melbourne Avenue, has no pedestrian crossings and no safe pick-up and drop-off zones. School staff already have to wear high-vis and stand in the middle of the road after school each day to stop children being injured. We have separately flagged the need for a crossing with Merri-bek Council on multiple occasions with no resolution to date. We have raised our concerns about the application under consideration tonight through the planning process, and we have suggested ideas such as introducing safe crossings, exploring making Logan Street a one-way street, and introducing speed bumps to discourage through traffic on Logan Street. However, we feel that our concerns have not been adequately addressed and our objection remains. The suggestion that these congestion and safety issues can be addressed through other avenues, such as the encouragement of walk-to-school programs, is, in our view, entirely inadequate. It downplays the seriousness of the current situation, the level of congestion, the lack of safe crossing infrastructure for our children, and the likely compounding negative impact of the proposed development on our kids, our school, and our local neighbourhood. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Great. Thank you, Megan, for taking the time to outline your objection. So I'll now call upon the permit applicant or their representative to make their submission. And for that, we've got Graham Stewart in person speaking on behalf of the applicant group.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Graham Stewart and I'm just speaking on behalf of the applicant, basically to show our support for the officer's recommendation this evening. I know the planning officer went through most of the site context, but I'll just reiterate a couple points. This is a residential zone with an existing compatible relationship with educational uses, and ultimately the reason for the proposal is to diversify the educational opportunities for children of all ages, noting that there's currently a primary school, secondary school and kindergarten, but not a childcare service at the moment. With respect to neighbourhood character, the applicant has made conscious efforts to meet the minimum permeable surface, garden area and maximum site coverage requirements, and they also plant 19 trees where there's only 4 existing on the site. So this sets a great precedent for non-residential developments in a residential zone, but also generally for residential zones. We acknowledge Megan's objection and several other objections relating to traffic impacts, but we would like to echo the Department of Transport, Council's traffic engineer and our own traffic engineer that there won't be any unacceptable traffic impacts or car parking availability issues. Essentially, the development's going to have about 94 increased movements at peak periods, which is 2 extra movements per minute. And basically, all the assessments have come back saying that this is appropriate for the location. By co-locating educational opportunities, you give families the opportunity to take one child to the childcare and another child to the primary school across the road. This may ignite more active transport measures and public transport use, given the site's within 600 metres of the Glenroe train station. So just in summary, we support the planning officer's recommendation this evening. Thank you.
Great, thank you for taking the time to
Cheers.
come in. Are there any other people in attendance in the gallery tonight who wish to address council on this application? If not, I'll see if councillors have got any questions to put to officers or the applicant. Councillor Bolton, and remember to unmute yourself, please. Yep.
This is more of a planning issue rather than a traffic issue rather than a planning issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually wondering if officers might follow up with the Transport Department about trying to resolve some of the safety issues around the traffic around the school. So I know that's not for the planners to deal with, but I actually think some of these issues, they're current issues, and I think regardless of whether or not there's a childcare centre, we need to deal with them.
All right, so I'll take that as a question. So can our officers please be in touch with the transport team to discuss some of these issues? Thanks, Ryan.
Yes, the planning officers can follow up this as an inquiry with the traffic engineering team. Comfortable
Easy.
with that response?
Great, thank you, Ryan. Are there any other questions from councillors of officers or the applicant? If not, could I please have a motion? I see Councillor Bolton with your hand up, and we'll just confirm what that motion is, and then we'll make sure that you've got a seconder. Oh, I'm sorry, unmute yourself.
Council officers' recommendation with one amendment, which is about increasing bike parking.
Yep, so we'll just confirm that that is brought on the screen with the changes. Highlighted
1M.
there. Excellent. All right, so that is on the screen. I'll see if you've got a seconder for that alternative motion. Councillor Conlon to second, Councillor Bolton.
Okay, so the reason I'm moving the council officer's recommendation with an amendment, just a small amendment, is because the report, the permit recommendation only recommended there's only provision for 4 bike parking places. And if anyone's familiar with Central Glenroy, there has been a big increase in the number of people cycling. It's not to the extent of Brunswick or Coburg, but there has been a big increase, not so much West Glenroy, but in Central Glenroy where it's pretty flat. And so I would anticipate that there will be a much bigger increase in cycling in the future. And while there aren't normally parents with kids on their bikes at the moment, like there are in Brunswick and Coburg, I think that will happen in the future. So my amendment is, extra amendment was to deal with that issue of trying to get more bike parking at the side. And I definitely hear the person from Glenroy Central Primary School about the traffic issues, and I have witnessed one occasion at school drop-off and pick-up times, the chaos, and the person, Megan, is not exaggerating that. But I think that is an issue which council needs to follow up after this meeting and try and work out some resolutions. It sounds like they've contacted council already. I think with the childcare centre, it is very centrally located. Glenroy is a growing area with a lot of families moving in, and I think that it is very well located, and I think the childcare pickups and drop-offs tend to be more staggered, whereas school pickups and drop-offs are very much segmented into small bits of time when millions of people by foot and bike and car all converging in one small space. And that's where the problems lie in this street for the school pickup and drop-offs. So I'm supporting this application for a childcare centre in this location. And hopefully maybe some of the parents, if you're watching, will contact some of the councillors to follow up the issues of the traffic issues around the school.
Great, thanks, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Conlon as the seconder.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
Great, I'll see if there are any speakers against this motion. Any other speakers in favour of this? Councillor Riley?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, I'd just like to sort of thank the School Council for presenting, but also encourage them to if they haven't already, and it sounds like they haven't. And as a school teacher, the Ride and Stride program that we offer for our schools is really important. You could try dropping your kids a couple hundred metres up the road or somewhere further away so that you don't have to actually all enter the school grounds. And we have other programs to encourage riding and striding. So that's another option that the council should be looking at, because not just this site, but all of the educational sites around here should be looking at that, because clearly there are issues around the amount of parent drop-offs, and that there are some really good strategies for actually reducing that, making life easier for families and for kids. So I'd recommend looking at that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Riley. Any other speakers on this item? If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Okay. So I'll now ask Ryan if you're able to outline the next steps, please.
The Council has decided to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the use and development of the land for a childcare centre and to display business identification signage, subject to the conditions contained within the alternate recommendation. Following the issue of the notice of decision, both the applicant and all objector parties will receive a copy of the notice of decision. Objectors will have 21 days to appeal Council's decision at the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. In the event that no appeal is lodged at VCAT, a planning permit will be issued. If a permit is issued, the applicant has 60 days from the date of issue of the notice of decision to appeal any conditions on the permit.
Great, thank you. So the next item that we have this evening is at 5.2, which is 35 Pentridge Boulevard in Coburg, amendment to planning permit MPS/2017/1006/C. Any conflicts of interest to disclose? No? All right, I'll now ask Esha Rahman, our planning coordinator, to please present the report.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, so this is an application at 35 Pentridge Boulevard in Coburg, seeking to amend the existing permit that allowed the construction of a 16-storey mixed-use building and townhouses and a reduction in the car parking requirement. The subject site is the site shown in purple, highlighted in purple. There are townhouses that have been constructed on the site with a basement car parking directly underneath. This application specifically relates to the southeastern corner of the site where a 16-storey tower has already been approved. In terms of the surrounds, to the rear of the site, you've got a row of dwellings that are located in the residential zone. To the west, the vacant property, but there's been permit issued for multiple 2- and 3-storey townhouses. And directly to the east is the Coburg High School. Opposite, we have the tennis club and a few undeveloped sites where permits have been issued for 6 to 10-storey high buildings. The site is in the activity centre zone, affected by the parking overlay and the environmental audit overlay. In terms of the strategic policy setting, the site is found within Precinct 10 in the Pentridge Village Master Plan. It's identified as with a number 13, and that broadly defines the site as having a 6 to 16-storey height control and for being mixed use. The corner which this application relates to is identified by the red dotted circle and is identified as being a marker building in the master plan. There has been a planning permit that approved the 48 townhouses that are 2 to 3-storey in height and a 16-storey mixed-use building. You can see the image of the 16-storey tower on your right-hand image. Since the permits have been issued, there have been several amendments approved. The key amendment includes approving the staging of the development, which allowed the townhouses to be constructed first. In terms of the proposed amendment, there is no change proposed to the approved building height. The tower continues to be at 16 storeys. There's an increase in the building envelope by putting in an additional 69 apartments. The ground floor have been revised to include retail area, gymnasium and a wellness centre. There's a new rooftop communal outdoor area. There's an increase in car parking reduction from 5 to 58 spaces, an increase in bicycle spaces from 247 to 358, and there is a change to the architectural appearance of the building, including material and facade changes. In the activity centre zone, the application is exempt from notice and appeal requirements. However, Council undertook informal notice of the application by sending notice to the owners and occupiers of adjoining and nearby land. As a result of that, we have received 8 submissions, with the main issues being car parking, traffic, congestion and safety, off-site amenity impacts that relates to overlooking, overshadowing and wind impact, building height, visual bulk and neighbourhood character, the apartment types, including limited family-sized apartments, and concerns relating to construction. A planning and information discussion meeting was held in August 2023 and attended by councillors, planning officers, applicants and 2 submitters. The key consideration of the application relates to off-site amenity impacts. The apartments have been designed and sited to limit overlooking within 9 metres of the existing townhouses. The proposal will result in minimal overshadowing into the tennis club and Coburg High School, but this is considered to be insignificant. Conditions have been recommended requiring an amended wind assessment report that seeks to ensure that the development will produce acceptable wind impact on the pedestrian footpath and rooftop terrace. The parking reduction, Council Development Engineers is supportive of, given the site's location in the activity centre zone with excellent access to public transport option. Moreover, proposal provides bicycle spaces which exceeds the planning scheme requirement. In terms of the design quality, the architectural changes and the new design is considered to be of high quality. Conditions have been imposed requiring an updated public works plan seeking improvements to the footpath. In relation to ESD, the best score has increased from the previous proposal from 60 to 72%, while the average NATIS rating have increased from 6.8 to 7.6 stars. Additional initiatives include a grass-free development and 43 kilowatt of solar access. With regards to community benefit, a condition of the existing permit required a 173 agreement to be entered into, requiring the provision of affordable housing. This agreement is registered on the certificate of title and is in force. The Office of Recommendation in tonight's agenda recommends that a notice of decision to grant an amended planning permit be issued. However, as the application is exempt from notice and appeal requirements, a corrected officer recommendation is that an amended planning permit be issued. This is subject to the same conditions as contained in the agenda, which ensures that a high level of ESD as proposed are delivered, acceptable wind impacts, a public work plan is provided for improvement to the footpath. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we've got no objectors indicating that they wish to speak. We do, though, have one person who's indicated that they wish to speak in support of the application, and that is Asanka Ipa, who is here in person. Oh, sorry, were you an objector?
No, I'm here representing.
You will be next. Hang on. All right.
Hey, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'd like to say first that I've loved seeing the Pendridge area built up. What was once empty land is now being used not only for lots of housing, but for lots of many, with a shopping centre, cinema, lots of hospitality venues, now serving the community, and that's why I'm supporting this mixed-use development. This amendment would increase the building footprint, resulting in an additional 69 apartments, a pretty significant addition of new housing in a housing crisis. All the new people that get to live there would benefit immensely as a result of planning approval. And in addition, we'd see increased retail, an enlarged gym and wellness centre, providing increased amenity to the community. This area has really good access to public transport with trains, trams and buses within walking distance, as well as the Pentridge Boulevard bike lane. Council has been willing to reduce parking requirements in the past where there's clearly ample non-car options for transport, and I don't think you could find a better place in Coburg than here when it comes to the lack of need to mandate expensive and space-consuming bedrooms for cars. I would simply urge Council to consider whether we're better off with 69 new dwellings and more facilities for the community, or whether shadow or built form or parking reductions that the opposite reports as all being acceptable outweighs that, which I don't think it does. In particular, I want to draw your attention to the future residents. We get a lot of talk about amenity, but the biggest impact on amenity in any development, I think, is for the new residents, who will either get to enjoy the amenity of the dwelling and the area which they've found to be the best option for them, or will be denied the opportunity to live here altogether. So I urge Council to approve this amendment. Thanks.
Great, thank you for coming in. So now I will call upon David Barnes from Hands in Partnership, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant group. Sorry. Great.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors. I apologise, I didn't realise there was another speaker.
All good.
I would just like to say that on behalf of the applicant that we've worked very closely with the council officers and staff over the last 12 months and resolved a lot of issues in relation to this development. And we think we've come up with a good outcome that's appropriate for the site and the surrounds and will have minimal impacts on surrounding properties. It's really a redesign of an existing building, and council's planners and urban designers unanimously agree that it's a more contemporary, a more elegant and a better design than the design of the building at the moment. The additional dwellings are much needed in this climate, and we all probably aware of the Minister's statement last week. And the building has been redesigned to really enhance the communal space, the sustainability of the building, and to meet all of the council's requirements with regards to car parking. There's great activation at street level. We think it'll be a real focal point in this area and provide some great facilities for both residents of this building and the surrounds. So we'd like to thank the council officers for their input, and hopefully it is a proposal that the council is able to support. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. I'll see if there's anybody else in the gallery who wishes to speak on this item. If not, councillors, are there any questions to put to officers or the representative of the applicant? No? All right. If not, can I please have a motion? Yep, Councillor Tapanos. Can I confirm the updated officer's recommendation? Yep, I'll see if you've got a seconder for that one. Councillor Riley to second. Councillor Tapanos.
I don't have much more to add, but overall I do believe that it is a better design outcome. And as we've heard today, we are in a housing crisis, so the additional dwellings will be welcomed in the community. This Pentridge precinct is starting to really take shape and form, and along the way it's going to change, it's going to evolve, so amendments to applications such as this are anticipated. What you're seeing here is additional density, I guess, but that is offsetted by better design outcomes in my view, so I'm happy to support the proposed changes.
Thanks, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Riley is the seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, yeah, this is a much improved application, even though it is seeking to have further dwellings, which one of our presenters tonight has sort of spoken to that case, the need for more accommodation in our city of Merri-bek, but more across metropolitan Melbourne and Victoria more broadly with the population pressures. So given that, I think the redesign is actually a much improved design in terms of amenity for those people who will be living there. But it's really good to see that the environmental development aspects of this are really in a fairly good shape. There's going to be a gas-free development, for example. Electronic vehicles will be able to be charged there and things like that. So this is really starting to future-proof show what can be done with some of our buildings that are going up to future-proof it for the climate emergency and the warming that we're having to experience and all of the issues that come with that. So whilst we're not approving this tonight, I think the changes are a big improvement. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Riley. I'll see if there are any speakers against this motion. Any other speakers in favour of this? Councillor Conlon?
Yep.
Great, thanks.
So I'm generally reluctant to support these planning scheme amendments, especially if they're repeated amendments, because that encourages land speculation and therefore increases land values. But in this case, the proposal is within all of the planning controls, so I'm happy to support it.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. Any other speakers on this? If not, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Was that against? All right, I'll call for a division. All right, I'll call for a division on that one just so we confirm the hands. So all those in favour were Councillor Conlon, Councillor Pulford, Councillor Davidson, myself, Councillor Tapanos, Councillor Riley, Councillor Yildiz and Councillor Bolton, and then against was Councillor Pavlidis. Okay, so given that that has happened, so I'll now ask Esha if you're able to please outline the next steps.
Thank you. So Council has decided to issue an amended planning permit for the construction of a 16-storey mixed-use building and reduction in the statutory car parking requirement subject to the conditions contained within the alternative officer recommendation. Following the issue of the amended permit, the applicant has 60 days from date of issue to appeal any conditions should they wish to on the permit. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So our next item for the evening is 5.3, which is 342 to 348 and 368 to 370 Victoria Street, 13 and 15 Rosser Street and 32 Wilkinson Street in Brunswick, an amendment to a planning permit, MPS/2017/745/A. Any conflicts of interest for this one? If not, I'll ask Luke Rogers, Senior Urban Planner, to please present the report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. So the matter for decision for council today is to determine a Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal position regarding an application to amend planning permit MPS/2017/745/A for development of the land for four multi-storey mixed-use buildings, partial demolitions, buildings and works in a heritage overlay, a reduction to the statutory car parking requirement, and use of the land for dwellings at 342 to 348 and 368 to 370 Victoria Street, 13 and 15 Rosser Street, and 32 Wilkinson Street in Brunswick. The subject site is located adjoining Victoria Street to the north, Rosser Street to the east, Wilkinson Street to the south, and the upfield rail corridor and shared path to the west, including the current location of the Brunswick station. The site is approximately 120 metres west of Sydney Road. The site also adjoins 28 Wilkinson Street, a warehouse-style building which contains a gym, which the site borders on three sides. Beyond those immediately adjoining land, opposite the site to the north on Victoria Street are various commercial tenancies. Opposite the site to the east on Rosser Street, we have a number of commercial tenancies, a council car park, and several dwellings that are within the heritage overlay. And to the opposite the site to the south on Wilkinson Street are a number of other dwellings. The wider area includes a range of commercial, industrial, public land and residential use and development, which would be expected based on its location, proximity to the Brunswick Activity Centre, and with the range of surrounding zones. As far as the key planning controls go for the site, The site is located in the Commercial 1 zone. It's also affected by a number of overlays, including the Design and Development Overlay, DDO 18, the Heritage Overlay, Heritage Overlay 183, the Parking Overlay, and the Environmental Audit Overlay. The Heritage Overlay is covering two areas of the site, being 13 and 15 Rosser Street, as well as the Heritage Chimney in the centre of the site. The strategic policy setting for the site is both nominated as an employment area, as well as nominated for significant housing growth. In regards to the site history, so the planning permit, MPS 2017-745, was issued through a consent order of VCAT on the 3rd of July 2018. The permit was granted for the construction of 4 mixed-use buildings. One of those buildings was dedicated to commercial use. There was also a reduction in the statutory car parking requirement, the use of the land for dwellings, and partial demolition and buildings and works within the heritage overlay. An extension of time was granted for that permit on the 2nd of June 2022, allowing the development to commence by 3rd of July 2024 and complete by 3rd of July 2028, and as such, the permit is still valid. As the original planning permit was issued through a VCAT process, the proposed amendment was able to be submitted directly to VCAT through the processes outlined in Section 87A of the Planning and Environment Act. So the proposed amendment to the permit seeks the inclusion of number 368 to 370 Victoria Street in the planning unit. It includes alterations to the design and massing of the buildings, an increase in the number of dwellings proposed from 158 to 284, a reduction in the number of car parking spaces from 335 to 118, an increase in the number of bicycle parking spaces provided from 291 to 513, a reduction in the employment floor area from 9,970 square metres to 4,125 square metres, a reduction to the extent of demolition of the heritage cottages, and a reduction in basement from 2 levels to 1 level. So during the notification period, 3 statements of grounds were provided to VCAT, allowing 3 objectors to join as parties to the VCAT proceedings. The key issues raised in those statements were traffic and parking, overshadowing of dwellings on Rosser Street, and windows to the boundary of 28 Wilkinson Street. Through the VCAT process, 2 compulsory conferences were held on the 14th and then 25th of September to allow a negotiation between the applicant, council officers, and the objectors. A consent position has been reached at the second of these compulsory conferences, with council officers signing an in-principle agreement with the applicants and the objectors present at the conference consenting. The officer recommendation in tonight's agenda is for council to adopt a position of no support for the proposal, with grounds of refusal based on issues outlined in the agenda. However, an alternate officer recommendation has been provided on the basis of the changes contained within the consented agreement reached at this second compulsory conference. The without prejudice plans and additional conditions outlined in the alternate officer recommendation largely addresses the issues raised in tonight's agenda report. I'll now briefly outline the changes that have been negotiated to meet the concerns of council officers and objectors. So those changes include key considerations and changes to the built form. This includes an increase in upper level setbacks to both Victoria and Rosser Street, which allows greater compliance with DDO 18 requirements and reduced overshadowing to the open space of the heritage dwellings opposite on Rosser Street. There's also been a reduction to the street wall height to Wilkinson Street, which has reduced the overshadowing to a key pedestrian street being Wilkinson Street, also in line with DDO 18 requirements. There's also been an increase in the setback between buildings 1 and 2 at both ground floor and first floor, which has allowed the increased width of the pedestrian access and increased visual connection through the site. In addition, there was changes made in regards to the employment, car parking, and affordable housing. The consent position reached included increasing the employment floor area by a minimum of 1,000 square metres allowing for the first floor of Building 1 to be used for commercial uses for a total of 5,125 square metres minimum employment area. Conditions are also agreed to with a car parking management plan to assure sufficient commercial car parking is provided and residential car parking is appropriately managed. Conditions are also agreed to for a Section 173 agreement required to ensure the provision of an appropriate management of 60% affordable housing on the site. The alternate officer recommendation is that Council's submission to Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal be one that agrees to the settlement position that an amended planning permit be issued subject to the consented conditions, which seeks to formally incorporate the changes shown on the without prejudice plan and agreed additional changes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we've got two objectors who've indicated that they wish to speak this evening, and so I'll see if we've got Paul Scopacasa and Elizabeth Weller online. Great. In the process of joining. Ah, okay. All right. So they're in the meeting but just haven't started their video. All right. Paul and Elizabeth, can you hear me?
It says they're still connecting to audio.
Oh, okay,
So they
thanks.
probably can't.
All right, thanks, Adam. Look, in the meantime, we do have Nick Dolby who is here in person, so we might go to Nick as we wait for their audio and visual to work.
Thank you for the opportunity to submit on this recommendation. I was wanting to submit on the first recommendation, which was a refusal, particularly on employment grounds, but also on pedestrian access. The firstly submitted proposal did not improve access to Brunswick Station from the north. It did not improve access from the east. The lack of balconies, verandas, rain and sun protection on Victoria Street and Wilkinson Street is notable. But even on Rosser Street is a north-south transport route for pedestrians. I've walked Rosser Street many times, and it too needs pedestrian amenity in the forms of verandas, awnings, whatever you want to call them. I note the alternative officer recommendation, and yes, it covers the employment area that I was concerned about, but it does not cover the pedestrian issues, which is the applicant and Merri-bek City Council giving back to the community greater amenity, greater walking amenity. So I'm still not happy with this proposal. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thanks, Nick. I'll see how Paul and Elizabeth are going now, if they might. Still going? All right, maybe they'll ought to leave and come back. All right. Oh, here we go. Perfect. Paul and Elizabeth, can you guys hear me? Oh no, it's connecting to audio. Okay. Can you two hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. You've got 3 minutes for your objection.
Oh, ours wasn't technically an objection. So we live opposite the development proposed. We just wanted to have some space to say that we appreciated that they changed the plan to make sure that our garden is not going to be overshadowed as much as the original proposed plan. And also just make reference to the fact that 3 of the on-street permit parking spots at the moment will be taken up with trees, and just provide feedback to the council that at the moment Russell Street is an incredibly busy street, and it's 2 ways with both permit parking as well as 2-hour parks, which has resulted in us and other neighbours not being able to park in any spot on the street. So just wanted to air that with the council today, that if we can have discussions in the future around potential changes to the permit parking, that would be wonderful, just because at the moment we're a bit worried with the new development coming in and the 2-hour parking piece, that we'll just never be able to get a park.
So yeah, just to qualify that, we were objectors initially, and we the named parties in the BGAT case, and then we have agreed to the plans. So through the discussions with the developers, we consented and signed onto the plans.
Great. Thank you for taking the time then to make your submission and for clarifying that as well. And yeah, on the parking permit thing, I'm sure that's something, again, that officers can follow up directly.
Sorry.
Thank you. So we do also have one person who's indicated that they wish to speak in support of the application tonight, and that's Jonathan O'Brien, who is here in person.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for having me. I'm Jonathan O'Brien. I'm the lead organiser of YIMBY Melbourne, and I'm here to speak in support of the amendment. I think the amended alternate officer recommendation is a really good settlement here in terms of kind of balancing, I guess, the concerns here. One of the things I wanted to sort of comment on initially before the proposal was being accepted by Council is that part of the reason the application was initially being rejected was for providing too much housing in a housing crisis. It was being rejected because it didn't meet commercial floor space targets. That is, of course, based on an amendment to a permit granted in 2018. But a couple of things have happened since 2018. The first, of course, being COVID. It changed the market fundamentals for office space. It changed the demand for office space. I'm sure many people in the meeting here tonight, how many more days a week are you working from home compared with 2018? And follow-up question, does anyone want to invest in commercial real estate? Second, we're in a worsening housing crisis. Everyone in this room is hyper aware of that. So it's kind of a bit of an indication. Usually I tend to agree wholeheartedly with the thankless work and the wonderful work that the planners, the Merri-bek Council planners do. But in this instance, I kind of wanted to draw attention to the fact that part of the reason this was being objected to was for not hitting commercial targets that were set in a very different economic context. The reality is that commercial floor space is not in demand. Housing is in demand. This is a great application that delivers more housing where people want to live. It even asks to demolish less heritage. What more could you want? Thank you all very much, and I look forward to seeing you approve this amendment this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. So I'll now call upon the permit applicant or the representative of the permit applicant, Thomas Marshall from Fieldwork Projects, to make the submission, and I believe he's here in person.
Hi, I'm Tom Marshall. I'm the project architect for Fieldwork and have designed the amended. I'll stand a little bit closer as well. I'm the project architect and responsible for the updated design that's in front of us today for decision. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to give a little bit of context to the changes behind the amendment. There's been a few things that have happened since 2018 when the original permit was granted. One thing to note is that the change of ownership from a build to sell model to a build to rent to own model by an affordable housing provider means that there are different apartment types and a different methodology in the design, and it does require that there's thinking put into how the building can be built in a simple and rational way so that it can be delivered affordably. There's also the changes to the rail corridor. As we know, the elevated rail will be coming through in the next few years, and that's very relevant for our site. So in response to that first major change about the change of model, we've undertaken a consolidation of what was very complex massing, and that has resulted in a bit of push and pull in the building volumes. So in some locations, you'll see that the building envelope sits somewhat outside the original envelope. In some locations, it's considerably inside that envelope. Overall, the building volume remains the same as what was originally proposed. It's just in a slightly different organisation. This allows us to build, have fewer steps. Say, for instance, on building 4 on the south, we had 6 steps in the massing. There are now 4 steps. That allows for less of a wedding cake type of presentation, but it's still a very sympathetic overall built form. And it does allow for those steps to occur in line with structural locations so that it's efficient. We've got a more efficient thermal envelope and waterproofing envelope, which allows everything to be delivered more affordably. In terms of materiality, there have been some, changes and, evolutions since the original design, where we had designed it to be used with brick. That was going to be delivered with brick insets into precast concrete. We've since seen that that can sometimes be delivered in ways that we don't really intend. The detailing can be a little bit compromised sometimes. So the change of materiality from inset brick to precast panels that are textured and mineral paint finished, which is a sort of through coloured staining, we consider that to be of equivalent quality and likely to be delivered with better detail. We are still proposing to use a fair amount of brick on the site, and that will be delivered in the form of hand-laid brick recycled from the existing buildings on the site. I'd also like to draw attention to some of the positive urban design changes that were made through the remassing.
In the last 2 sentences?
Yep. And that was to provide an additional laneway to the south and also to improve the connection to the upfield corridor so that there are better connections between that space and the heritage chimney.
Great, thank you. I'll see if there's any other speakers or people in attendance in the gallery who wanted to speak on this. If not, I'll see council. Yeah, I was just going to get there. I'm sorry, is that somebody who wishes to speak? Okay. Thanks, Tom. We'll have our next speaker then. Oh, no, that's all right. What was your name? Sorry.
Chris Daff, Managing Director of the proponent.
Yep.
So I think I just wanted to sort of say tonight, I wanted to sort of thank Luke and Vader for a sensible sort of rational negotiation at VCAT earlier in the week. So, they can be pretty draining processes, and I think we sort of got to a pretty sensible middle ground on each of the items. So thanks to the officers for that work. And I think this proposal looks pretty simple. It's just about putting roofs over people's heads. So we've got about 1,500 homes across 5 projects in Merri-bek, one of which is under construction just north of this site. So that's 171 homes under the same housing model being funded by Big Super. So this housing model was a model that we developed in partnership with Australian Super. So, and why they're interested in a housing model like this to support their members and Australians on similar incomes to their members into home ownerships, I think an important point to make. So, and the reality for them is they look after the retirement savings of 3 million working class Australians with an average income of about $63,000 per year. So they're not wealthy Australians by any means, and they find housing really complicated. So them investing in housing models like this where we can support your average working class Australian into the housing market and into home ownership, something that's really, really important from their perspective and from ours also. So, look, I really hope you can sort of get on board and support the officer's recommendation here for this project. And as I said, we've got another 3 projects coming through the system, over the next year or so, and we've got a demonstrated track record of being able to, once we get our approvals, we get on and build the housing. So we look forward to getting on and starting this one early next year.
Great, thank you. So I've got a couple of questions. Councillor Tapanos, was that for Chris or for Tom?
Was it for Chris or Tom, or one of the two?
And unmute yourself.
For one of the two, whichever one can answer, it's a design question. But I was going to say, are you familiar with the Merri-bek Park close to home strategy?
I'm broadly familiar with it, but I'm probably not best placed.
Okay.
It's
Well,
not yet, yeah.
you
All
may
right,
know.
what's your question?
You may know that this large parcel of land sits in if not the most prioritised area for open space in the city, at least the second most prioritised area for open space in the city. I think it's joint either 1 or 2. So what that means is that it's the one area in our municipality that we want to see open space created that has the least amount of open space. And this also goes to heating and the heat island effect and the impact of concrete and large buildings in our municipality. And if I had the heat mapping in our area in front of me, I would guess that this would also be the hottest place in the municipality. So taking all of those policies into consideration, I noticed that despite the fact that you're increasing the density substantially, and you are providing some additional benefits from a heritage, setback and walkability perspective, you're still well short on your landscaping standard, substantially well short. I know that it's...
What's the question, Lambros?
I mean, has there been more consideration towards more open space, more permeable surfaces, more landscaping in this area, which it's the most needed area in our city?
Yeah, look, there's a few parts to that. So there's one is, what are the open space connections through our site? So, and as a part of the discussions with the officers and Council's urban design team, we provided an increased connection. So we've got another connection that goes completely north-south through our site. There's an east-west site. You'll be familiar with the landscaping plans, no doubt. So there's a small wetlands, water-sensitive urban design element at the back of the heritage cottages on Rosser Street, which is a lot of soft landscaping and some deep soil planting through that zone. So we've made the most of where the basement is not in place around the heritage chimney to increase our sort of tree planting and tree canopy cover in that area. So, yeah, I'm very comfortable with the job that Marla's done in designing the landscaping for our site, and there's a large sort of public plaza too surrounding the heritage chimney in the middle of the crucifix that goes through our site. And obviously there's the east-west pedestrian connection from Rosser Street, which is much improved now because we've got rid of these they had sliding wind doors, that were required. So we've worked with our wind engineers to get rid of those and have a fully accessible 24/7 pedestrian connection in the east-west through our site to provide improved connectivity to the station.
Sure. But you still, just supplement, you still acknowledge that you're providing 600 square metres
Is that a question or a rhetorical question, Councillor?
No, I mean, is it 600 square metres you are providing? Is that correct when the standard is 1,300 square metres?
I'd have to check. I don't know that.
All right, thanks, Councillor Tapanos. Now, Councillor Bolton did have her hand up first. All right, Councillor Conlon, another question?
So sort of following on from Councillor Tapanos, but slightly different angle, this is a very important central part of Brunswick. The site, it sort of connects into Brunswick Station, a very busy, important station, likely to increase as the density of the area increases as well. So pedestrian connectivity is going to be an extremely important strategic outcome that Council is trying to improve in that precinct. The original plans showed an east-west connection traversing right through the middle of the site to connect straight through to central Brunswick, and that's in line with other types of walkways that councils achieved through private development to ensure that people can actually get through and move through the municipality. Why was that deleted in some recent plans? I know there's been discussions now that are reinstating that, but just wanting to know what happened there.
It's still there. I think the location of the western connection from the centre of the crucifix to the station precincts moved slightly north, and that was through discussions with the urban design team here to improve visibility of the chimney from various important aspects, one of which was from the station precinct.
Yeah. And are you able to give us a sense of the dimensions that you're proposing that walkway will be? Because I guess there's a difference between having like a tiny little narrow walkway compared to an actual sort of pedestrian boulevard that would actually substantially improve the pedestrian experience.
Tom here.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Just at the mic so those outside can hear you. Thank you.
So in relation to the changes around pedestrian access to the station, there's a couple of things to consider there, and one is the levels at the station. So the landscaping around the existing Brunswick station has been built up about 1 metre to the height of the platform. So if you build a direct walkway that goes straight to the front door, and our site's very close to that front door, you have to put in stairs. So there's it was about 1.2 metre to 1.4 metre high level change. So it's not actually a universally accessible pathway there. The main access point we have now is universally accessible, so it would be wheelchair accessible to the upfield corridor. It's also wider, so the proposed new connection is 8 metres wide, and then instead of the sheer volumes that were approved in the previous permit, it actually sets back after ground floor, which means we have improved wind conditions, which means we no longer need the glass wind gates that were conditioned into the approved scheme. Now it can be done without that or a solid canopy.
Great. Any follow-up questions or other? Councillor Riley?
Thank you. Yeah, just if you can comment on the ESD provisions were fairly high in the officer's report in the agenda, which we were going to refuse, but was wondering what that's looking like under the negotiated outcome, and if this site's going to actually be gas-free.
Either or.
Yeah, all our projects are gas-free. And with regard to the ESD, I'd have to check what the original NAITH's rating was for the project, but we've got minimum standards of, I think, 7.5 stars for all our projects, but most of them are over 8 now.
Great. Thank you. I'll see if there's any final questions. If not, thank you both for answering those questions. And so if not, you can pop back to the gallery and I'll see if I've got a motion. Councillor Riley is on his feet. Can I confirm what
I'm going
you're moving?
to go with the officer's updated recommendation today. It's not the one on the agenda, but the one that's been issued to councillors. Thanks.
Great. I'll see if you've got a seconder for that one. Councillor Davidson, Councillor Riley as the mover.
Yeah, thank you. Look, this is quite complicated, this application, and it is something that is being decided by VCAT, and we're just determining our position that will go to VCAT. But after all these negotiations, it's not, the most ideal outcome, but it's a much improved outcome. And with Jonathan's objections to the commercial space, I don't share those. I think we can get commercial outcomes and housing outcomes, which looks like is going to happen here. So I don't think it's necessarily one or the other. And we want to have employment, we want to have job creation in our city, and the latest figures I'm looking at is a lot of people going back to work. So that doesn't mean to say a lot of people going back to open shops and things, but we do want opportunities for future employment in our city. That's why this is really important to me as a councillor, because this is part of our land use strategy. So thank you for submitting on that, but I think we can do both. I'm really pleased to see that it's gas-free. And I did ask a question of the officers, and if councillors have had a chance to check their emails today, they'll see the detailed plans on the pedestrian and wheelchair access to the station, because that was something that I was very concerned about in the original application, and that's much improved. So there's an email that shows quite detailed descriptions of some staircases for those who can use stairs, but there will be an alternative, longer path for people with wheels. So that's really good. The affordable housing component is good to see, and that it's actually now going to be settled within Section 173, because I think without that I'd be quite concerned about how that would be maintained. And I'm still going to be very interested to see how this plays out in the future for future affordability, because I have some doubts about how you can maintain that in the housing supply system, particularly on the rental side. So whilst it's a good start, I'm not convinced that it's going to provide affordable housing in the decades and the generations to come. Whereas some of the other models I see that come across this chamber do, and this one doesn't. So I just wanted to be clear about that. I've got some concerns about that. But otherwise, I think the improved setbacks are something to be acknowledged, as well as the awnings on Victoria Street. Mr. Dolby, you'll be very happy to know that those are some of the questions we were asking about. I haven't seen the detail on Rosser Street because this is all very late coming to us, so there's a lot of detail we're not quite up to speed on, but I'm hoping that they're listening to us tonight and the developers will do what they can to make sure that that pedestrian amenity on Rosser and Wilkinson and other aspects of the site besides Victoria Street will also get a really good treatment as well. There's, I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Mayor.
Great, thanks, Councillor Riley. Councillor Davidson as the seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. And I too would like to support the officer recommendation that has been recently circulated. I think it's a well-considered and well-negotiated position to put to VCAT, and I thank the applicant for working with officers quite diligently to reach this point. I think it's important to work within the structures that we have whilst pushing the boundaries to try to achieve the best possible outcomes for residents of Merri-bek and future residents of Merri-bek as well. I'm satisfied with the affordable housing component and the ESD outcomes that this development achieves. And on the whole, it's a much better, well-considered application that is being presented to VCAT tonight because of the groundwork that the applicant and the officers have done to reach this point.
Thanks, Councillor Davidson. A speaker against, Councillor Conlon.
I'd like to speak against and also foreshadow a alternative motion for a deferral. So I think it's actually quite disappointing that we're in this position. I think we should sort of step back and look at what's actually happened. So I know that we're not making a decision tonight. Council's deciding on its position in the VCAT process, but we've heard from a few councillors tonight in terms of having major concerns and questions about key design elements of this proposal. Councillor Tapanos brought up the open space questions. I brought up a major question about how the public space that goes right through the middle of this site is going to be treated. We haven't seen a design for that yet. So the whole process has been very rushed, and that's not a critique of council officers who I know have been working very hard to negotiate better outcomes, but the major design changes and changes that have happened, we've been updated as councillors via email 2 days ago, and I don't feel particularly confident in making a well-informed decision based on the process. And again, it's not a critique of the officers or anyone individual who's been involved in this process. It's a problem. It's a critique of the political processes that have put us in this position, which is the pressure from the state government and the developer which is really asking council to wave this proposal through. Like I said, this is in a very important central part of Brunswick, and for me, key design considerations of the site have not been gone through a proper process where councillors can have a look at a detailed officer report to look at all of these issues. Even Councillor Riley alluded to that issue just then. There's this question of the commercial floor space also brought up, which was originally supposed to be 9,000 square metres. It's been now increased to 5,000 square metres. I mean, I understand there's been critiques about, the merits of having commercial floor space, but I mean, council is still pursuing a very lengthy and expensive and detailed planning scheme amendment process to change the Brunswick Activity Centre to get more commercial floor space out of the Brunswick Activity Centre. So I don't think it's an irrelevant consideration. So I do think it's prudent on council to take its time in having a look at all of the details of this proposal, especially these big changes or big design considerations, and having a proper report to councillors so that the community can properly understand it, and there can be some better transparency around the negotiations and exactly what is being proposed and changed.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. I'll see if there are any other speakers in favour of this motion.
Can I just ask a question in regards to Councillor Conlon's proposed deferral? If that were to be the case, what are the I'm asking is, what are the timelines like on this application?
Great.
Thank you. Through the chair, the actual full hearing at VCAT is set for the 20th of November. So that would provide for the ability for a report to be presented to the October council meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Tapanos. I'll see if there are any other speakers in favour of this item. Councillor Pulford?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, look, I understand that it's been a messy process, but that isn't, as Councillor Conlon noted, officers' fault. There was the VCAT conference on Monday, so it sounds like there was significant movement there, which has led officers to update their recommendation with the alternative that's been moved here tonight. I think we do need to go back to the limitations of the planning system and our role as councillors, and also how that's changing kind of in live time. So this development would be applicable under the new proposed planning arrangements in Victoria for the state government to take responsibility for this decision. So I think that needs to frame councillors' decision tonight. Also, this is a consent position that's been worked through with the objectors who we heard from tonight, or some of the objectors, and council and the applicant. And it's good to hear that the applicant has listened to a lot of the concerns raised by both council and the objectors, and council officers and the objectors seem happy with this arrangement. It is a consent position. So I'm happy to endorse this. Officers have worked hard to get agreement around increasing the setbacks and getting more information about the affordable housing offering at 60%. I know it's not the perfect affordable housing offering, but in terms of the diversity of arrangements in the housing stock, I think this is good. Increased employment floor space, as discussed, and it was interesting to hear what the architect said about the pedestrian access as well, in terms of, given the height difference, how this proposal seems to be more accessible. So happy to support this, and I don't think we need a deferral, but I do understand that it has happened over the last 2 days, but that's because of the hearing date. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pulford. Are any speakers against this proposal? Any other speakers in favour of this proposal? I might speak to this briefly as well. Just, I guess, highlighting again the fact that this was a process at VCAT, and the fact is that we did have that consent position reached by the objectors, which I think is something that, you know, we as decision makers, we do listen quite seriously to when objectors raise concerns, and the fact that there has been a consent position reached is something that I think that we should take quite importantly. You know, there's been the initial proposal, I think there was a reason why the officers did suggest to refuse it. However, the whole point of compulsory conference and leading up to a final, I guess, VCAT hearing is to be able to reach those compromises and to be able to negotiate. That's the whole point of this thing. And it's quite clear that through like the increased setbacks, the reduced street wall height, the reduced overshadowing, the increased pedestrian access, the 60% affordable housing now actually in a section 173, the increase in the employment floor space and the car parking management plan, and the better design outcomes and the extra heritage work, it's clear that those negotiations have worked as intended in a compulsory conference. On some of the specifics that were raised by perhaps people speaking against this proposal, like on the floor space, it actually would comply with the proposed Brunswick Activity Centre zone that officers are working on. So it actually is forward-looking in terms of the employment space that needs to be provided, and this is something that we value quite a lot. And you know, it's right, we are spending a lot of money and a lot of officer time on this, and so that's why it's good that this would comply with those standards. And in addition, you know, we have had numerous emails and of course the briefing on Monday night, which would have been nice if we had more councillors attend, because that probably would have actually clarified a few of the concerns that they had for this proposal. So, you know, on the whole, this proposal has improvements on what was initially proposed. This is the point of negotiation at a compulsory conference, and as I have constantly done, I would encourage councillors to be engaged at every step of the process, so that, you know, we are able to be more well informed when it comes to meetings like this one, and we can, you know, talk with officers and understand from the applicant the negotiations and the compromises that actually have been undertaken in a planning system that means that we often have very little to negotiate on So I just wanted to thank the officers and the applicant for working through this compulsory conference in good faith, and hope that councillors can see that in the way that they vote this evening. Okay, I'll see any speakers against. Councillor Bolton, or in favour? Okay, sort of a bit of both, that's all right, just unmute yourself.
I am a bit, I think it sounds as if, in terms of the time frame, it will be okay to defer this item. On the other hand, I am a bit reluctant to defer from the point of view of this having gone to a compulsory conference and rather than going to a full hearing. And also there are other objective parties involved besides just the council. So I tend to think we should pass this development, even though I'd rather see some improvements, and I think people have hit on particular issues that need to be improved, and I agree with Councillor Riley's comments before about, there's no guarantees with this model of housing affordability. In fact, a lot of models of housing affordability that are presented by developers are not really worth anything in the long term because there's no guarantee of in perpetuity. But so I would definitely prefer to see improvements made, but I tend to think it's a little bit risky to actually defer it, actually, is my gut feeling. And it sort of has implications, not just in terms of councils thinking in general about the amenity of the community, but also objectors who might have participated in the consent, in the compulsory conference consent process. So I think, yeah, I'm really speaking in favour of it, even though reluctantly.
Thanks.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yeah, question.
Just, can we have officers' opinion on that risk question of what, if we defer it by a month, what risk level do you think that involves? Given that, like you said, that the VCAT hearing is November. Yeah.
Thanks, Phil, and then we might close debate.
Thank you, Mayor, through the chair. So this is really a process issue in that what council has before it tonight is a agreed outcome of all the parties through a compulsory conference. If that alternative officer recommendation is not supported, then we are back to the decision that's made based on the original officer report and what council's final decision is there. There isn't a further opportunity for a compulsory conference through VCAT, so we're likely in a process of a full VCAT hearing. Those offers that have been put as part of the negotiated outcome would no longer, they are without prejudice offers at the point of that compulsory conference. So the plans that would be heard at the VCAT hearing in November would be the original plans lodged with this proposal.
Is that another question? Or
No, I'd like to speak in the debate.
in favour or against?
I'll speak in favour in the debate after hearing the manager for planning. Yeah, look, I mean, there's a lot more that could have been better with this application, undoubtedly. And for one, I think, the open space is a really important one for me because we're trying to solve or contribute towards the affordable housing issue, but we also want to make sure that we have very livable green open spaces and permeable spaces and landscape. But when I consider the parameters for the decision making, I do note that the 600 square metres is an addition, is greater than what was previously there in the first permit. It's half of the standard, so I'm not happy about it, but it is greater than the current permit. So if in my decision making I'm meant to compare the two, then what we have before us is better than the previous one. I don't see, if there isn't an opportunity to renegotiate for another compulsory conference and get more open space or more or something better in regards to the walkability elements that have been mentioned, then I really don't see a reason to defer the application. Overall, judging the application, there's some really good community benefits around the affordable housing stuff and around heritage. I wish it did a little bit more on open space, but overall it probably should be supported.
Thanks, Councillor Tapanos. So I'll see if the mover wishes to exercise their right of reply.
Yeah, look, I thank everyone for the contributions. Look, it is a lot to take in, but you know that's why we have briefings on Mondays, and there was a lot we had to take in on Monday, believe me. So I agree with the issues about open space and canopy and shade in our city. You've spoken regularly about that, and whilst it'd be good to see a better outcome here, I don't think we can actually continue to sort of do that this evening, given the compulsory conference nature of that. So the north-south access in this site, there have been some conditions on that in the negotiations, is my understanding, to try and get it standardised right through the whole pathway there. So it's actually, I think, full 3 metres all the way through. The employment space is a reasonable change, and I think while we're not requiring it across the whole site, because it's a very big site, this site, and I walk and ride past here regularly, and looking forward to some change there, that an extra 1,000 square metres is really a good compromise in my view. So I'm pleased to hear that it meets our requirements under our guidelines. The fact that residents are satisfied with the reduced overshadowing, and I should just say to you folks that you can actually go online tonight and apply for your whole street to be turned into 2-hour parking. You can follow the guidelines there and get that cracking. You don't have to wait for us. Happy to talk further about that offline. But I just want to also thank the officers for their work on this. This has been a really a lot of work and a lot of negotiating. So thank people for their contribution to the debate too.
Thanks, Councillor Riley. So we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour of this motion? All those against? That is carried. Do we get a division? Yep. So all those in favour were Councillor Pulford, Councillor Pavlidis, Councillor Davidson, myself, Councillor Tapanos, Councillor Riley, Councillor Yildiz and Councillor Bolton, and Councillor Conlon was against. So, Luke, if you're able to outline the next steps, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Council has resolved to determine a VCAT position of consent to grant an amended planning permit number MPS/2017/745/A for development of the land for 4 multi-storey mixed-use buildings, partial demolitions, buildings and works in a heritage overlay, reduction of the statutory car parking requirement and use of the land for dwellings at 342 to 348 and 368 to 370 Victoria Street, 13 and 15 Rosser Street and 32 Wilkinson Street, Brunswick, subject to the conditions contained in the alternate officer recommendation. Following the decision and the notification of the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, an order will be issued by VCAT for the amended planning permit to be granted.
Great,
Thank you.
Thank you. So the final item that we have this evening is 5.4, which is units 1, 2, 3 and 4 at 17 to 19 Hope Street, Brunswick, and 17 to 19 Hope Street, Brunswick planning application. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, 2, 4, 6. All right, no other councillors leave the room, please. Otherwise we won't have quorum. Yep, so planning application MPS/2022/701. Vita, if you're, as the acting unit manager of urban planning, if you're able to present the report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as mentioned, this is an application at what is broadly known as 17 to 19 Hope Street in Brunswick for a multi-storey mixed-use development and car parking reduction. The subject site is located on the southern side of Hope Street, immediately adjacent to the upfield shared path and railway corridor, and the immediate surrounds are characterised by a mix of 2-storey commercial buildings, 8-storey mixed-use apartment buildings, and some single-storey dwellings. There's an emerging character of 8 to 9-storey buildings, particularly to the north, east and south of the site. In terms of the key planning controls, the site is within a commercial 1 zone, is affected by a design and development overlay, environmental audit overlay, and the parking overlay. The site's within the Brunswick Activity Centre, which is an area identified for significant housing growth, and preferred built form outcomes are informed by the design and development overlay. The proposal seeks approval for a mixed-use development with a maximum building height of 30 metres, which is 9 stories, up to 9 stories. 282 dwellings are proposed. 2 retail tenancies will front Hope Street. 15 on-site car share spaces are provided, plus an accessible parking space, and that results in a car parking reduction of 287 car spaces. 464 bicycle spaces are provided, and there is a publicly accessible communal open space within the western setback of approximately 1,100 square metres. During public notice of the application, 10 objections were received. There's also been a letter of support. Main issues raised in objections related to car parking and loading, the building scale, height and setbacks, impact on infrastructure and public open space, off-site amenity impacts including visual bulk, overlooking and overshadowing. Planning information and discussion meeting was held in May and was attended by approximately 5 objectors. And the meeting provided an opportunity for the applicant to explain the application, for objectors to elaborate on their concerns. However, there were no changes agreed to at that meeting. In assessing the application, officers consider that the development has a number of positive attributes. So that includes excellent environmentally sustainable design outcomes and net community benefits through the provision of publicly accessible communal open space adjacent to the upfield bike path and a provision of a minimum of 15% affordable housing. The proposed car parking arrangement is acceptable, having regard to the site's location and the provision of car share and bicycle spaces. The proposal offers high levels of internal amenity and generally complies with Clause 58 of the planning scheme, subject to the minor variations outlined in the officer's report. The building height and setbacks are generally acceptable, having regard to a number of factors, including the site context, emerging scale of development in the area, and the benefit provided by the generous western setback. However, a condition of the recommendation requires increased setbacks to level 7, which is opposite 23 and 25 Oven Street, which are 2 houses located in the mixed-use zone, and the purpose of that condition is to reduce the visibility of the uppermost level and also to comply with Council's apartment development policy. Subject to this change, the proposal is not considered to result in unreasonable amenity impacts. The proposed development is considered an appropriate response to the emerging scale of the activity centre, and the additional discretionary building height and setbacks sought are considered acceptable upon a balanced consideration of the relevant considerations and policies of the Merri-bek planning scheme and the proposed benefits provided by the publicly accessible open space and affordable housing offer. It's therefore recommended that a notice of decision to grant a permit be issued, subject to conditions as contained in tonight's agenda. And that includes the increased setback to level 7 that I mentioned, provision of an additional on-site space for loading, and a requirement to enter into a Section 173 agreement to lock in the benefits of the affordable housing and publicly accessible open space. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we've got 4 objectors who have indicated that they wish to speak. So I'll firstly see if Anna Cordner and Dom Richardson are online. They're not? All right, we'll go to the in-person people and we'll see if they come later. Okay. So we've got Anthony Liu, who is here in person. Thanks.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak tonight. I'm an objector. I'm a local resident. I live in a Nightingale apartment. There are several key issues for me. One is that This area has seen significant development in the last 10 years. There's over 20 apartment buildings in this area. This is potentially the most dense population area in all of Merri-bek. And there's more development going up in this local area. There's a building that's currently being constructed and others approved. So this is potentially the most dense population area in all of Merri-bek. The amount of open space in this area is limited to Merri-bek Park, which, if you're not familiar with it, has very limited open space, limited grassy area. This area really needs more open space. The proposed application has linear park included. Linear park has very limited benefit to the local area. If you look at linear park, it's some grass with some vegetation, and that's it. There are no tables. You can't have, it's right next to the train line, so it's not peaceful. You can't run around. It's not an area where you can just gather and spend time. So linear park has very limited benefit. Another key issue for me, if you look at the site, it's a really big site. On page 282 and 284 on the agenda tonight, it acknowledges that linear park will only get up to 2 hours of sunlight during the day. Up to 2 hours of sunlight, and that's it. It'll be overshadowed by the development and the future Skyrail. So again, limited benefit to linear park. One last key issue for me is that in the traffic report, page 56, where it discusses the emergency services access, it has one sentence on the traffic report, page 56, where it says, emergency services will access this site on Hope Street. So if there's a fire, for example, if there's a fire in one of the apartments, in one of the buildings, the emergency services will have to tackle that fire from Hope Street. Considering the size of this development, the number of apartments, the number of buildings, I think there's a major safety issue if this application is approved.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right on time too. So, next up, I'll see if we've got Bianca Scuto here in person.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak tonight. I agree with everything that was said previously, so I'm not going to repeat all that, but would just want to expand on that. I'm from one of the properties in the Duckett Street precinct, which was part of the Nightingale development. And in one instance, we actually did have a fire in the street and the fire truck couldn't get in. So that's like a real-time example of when that actually happened. There's issues accessing like fire points, so all of the systems and oh my gosh, I've gone blank, but all the fire systems to be able, the truck to plug into to actually get in there. So that was something that actually did happen in the street. Again, like with Linear Park, similar in Duckett Street, they created a little area, park area. It doesn't get used. It's now actually getting redeveloped by the residents because that area doesn't get any daylight. It's just become like basically like a dog area to go to the toilet on, so no one sits there. The other issue is like parking, mainly loading and unloading, so residents moving in and out of the apartments. When this happened in the village, it was chaos, so because there was not one spot for that to occur. And that was, blocking people's entry to their apartments. Furniture was up on people's buildings. It was just not working. So having spaces for residents to move in and out is pretty critical when you have no parking. Also, when you have buildings this big, the management of that, like services, maintenance, how do vehicles get in and out to sort of check your fire systems, maintain your lift, where do they park? There's no off-street parking really available for that. Whereas the properties that do have parking or some parking, there is available space for, cars to be off the street and out of the way. in Duckett Street that every second day I put in a report of something being blocked that increases, you know, requests to council to fix problems. It's created such chaos in that street. The amount of times that I've had to be on the phone to council to resolve things not only takes up my time, but council's time, and that costs everybody more money at the end of the day. So like by having a few loading zones and things, I don't really see how that's like not improving the amenities or the use of the property. I think it actually makes it better. Also, we've had a lot of requests from residents in the area about parking. So you know, there obviously is a need for some parking spaces. It doesn't have to be, you know, I'm supportive of reduction of parking 100%, but I think there does need to be some amenity available for people who do need a spot or a temporary spot, just considering, you know, the limited parking spaces, you know, in the area. So, yeah.
Great.
That's
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
I'll see if Anna or Dom have joined us online. Yep, great. They're joining. Oh, there we go. Great.
Hi,
Hi, you can hear me?
I can.
Perfect. Thanks. Dom, you've got 3 minutes.
I'm one of the sort of the two, or we are one of the two sort of single-story dwellings, and I guess this building obviously, you know, affects us quite substantially. I suppose on the sort of, so I suppose I've got two things I'd like to talk about is heights and car parking, but on the heights, I guess I'm not, I mean, my understanding is, and I thank the sort of planning department for sort of, I think, working on our behalf to get level 7 brought back. And my understanding is that that means sort of, even though it will be 7 levels, from the perspective of sort of 25 and 27, it will, you know, appear to be 6. And I suppose I'd like to urge the council or the planning department to have that to be, I mean, I think there's been some overshadowing sort of drawings provided, but that the sort of, the guiding principle of that is not a random number of sort of 5 metres, but that it appears to be 6 levels for those two sort of dwellings. And the other thing is car parking in that sort of area has always been bad. It's got worse as more and more buildings go up. I mean, I noticed that the previous application is also asking for a reduction in car parking. It seems like everyone is. I think this is a real problem. There seems to be in the sort of recommendations a $500 levy on residents, which we sort of don't think is really a disincentive to not having a car. I think we think it's not unreasonable that if it's accepted by everybody, that people will have cars who will be living in these apartments, that appropriate parking is provided for them. So I think that's pretty much all I've got to say.
Great. Thank you, Dom, for taking the time to outline your objection. Pardon? It's in the report, Councillor Tapanos. No worries. So we've also got 4 people who've indicated that they wish to speak in support of the application. So we've got Jonathan O'Brien, who is still here in person. It's on page 283.
Thanks all. Sorry, trying to sync devices in the council chambers is a little bit ambitious. Thank you all very much for having me in a move that surprises no one. As the lead organiser of YIMBY Melbourne, I'm voicing support for this development. I'm going to keep it brief because I don't have a perspective on this development that you haven't heard 1,000 times. I know you've heard the perspective 1,000 times because in conversations all across Melbourne and Victoria, in mid-rise offices and over family table dinners, the work of Nightingale is consistently cited as the gold standard for positive housing and planning outcomes. Your planners think so, many of you in this room think so, and I think so. To reject this development would be to send the signal that no, nothing is good enough. There's no standard of design, affordability, meaningful housing supply that is good enough to be worth building. And this is more than good enough. It's much more than that, and it is deeply, deeply needed. Where there is currently a mess of empty lots and warehouses, it provides 1,200 square metres of open space. Where there is currently a mess of empty lots and warehouses, it provides social and affordable homes. And where there is currently a mess of empty lots and warehouses, it provides 2 retail tenancies for small local businesses. Councillors, tonight you have a mandate to make sure that Merri-bek remains the proud home of Australia's housing gold standard and to signal to all levels of government that good work can yield good outcomes. I urge Merri-bek Council tonight to show the rest of the city and the country what's possible. Once again, just let them build the thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. So next up, we've got Tiffany Sassafras, who is here in person. Thanks, Tiffany. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, councillors, and hi, Mayor. I've met a few of you at my home in Nightingale. So I live in the Nightingale Village currently. I'm in social housing with my son, Sonny, who's sitting in the front row there. I just wanted to give you a little rundown on how I ended up there. So I was actually homeless for almost 3 years, which included couch surfing, staying with friends, relatives, staying in my van. Eventually, I was in emergency housing. I applied for hundreds of places, rental properties. As you know, there is a massive housing crisis. I walked into JICA Community Centre, who put me through to Juno, who work with women and children. I had an interview with them. They put me through to Women's Property Initiative, who then put me through to Nightingale. So I have now had safe and amazing housing for almost a year. It has changed my life and my son's life. I am now working with Juno, and we have an upcoming workshop which is called, it's actually in the Merri-bek Council, so working with women and trauma. It's a 6-month thing that's starting, October. All I can say is it really has changed my life, and social housing is really needed at this moment in time. I've had so many people asking me, is there any more housing? I said, well, yes, there is housing being built all the time, and hoping that Nightingale can and will build some more amazing spaces. It's a great community to live in as well. I think that's about it.
Great. Thank you,
Thank
Tiffany.
you so much.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I just want to check, Councillor Pulford, can you still hear and see us properly?
Yes, the camera pointing towards the resident speaking was freezing for me. I'm not sure if it was freezing for everyone getting broadcast the image. The timer was still ticking, so just wanted to bring that to your attention.
All right, thanks. Thanks. Okay, so next up, we've got Sandra Simpson, who is here in person. Great, thanks, Sandra.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. Can I please be allowed to begin by first acknowledging the Wurundjeri people, of the Wurundjeri people, that of the traditional custodians of the lands and the waters in which we meet here tonight. My name is Sandra Simpson. I am here, and I have lived in Merri-bek for 29 years. I'm a ratepayer as well, Together with my partner Tim and our 12-year-old daughter Alita, we belong to Merri-bek's community. We belong to Nightingale Village, and we belong to Parklife, the yellow building. I am here tonight to share a brief summary of how wonderful it is to live in this, to belong and to live and be nested by the Nightingale Village community. Our initial attraction to the Nightingale Village was beyond the sustainable principles and progressive design that they are so well renowned for. For us, it was all about community living. Initially, we worried about our daughter not having other peers her age, but now we can see that her world has been enriched beyond anything we could ever had imagined. This has been through the bare notion that we share our space and resources with approximately 300 other neighbours across 6 buildings, living in one community. Most weeks, you'll find me watering the gardens at Merri-bek Park, where I've had the great pleasure of meeting neighbours from Brice Street, Florence Street, Hope Street and beyond. They're not part of the Nightingale Village, they're part of Merri-bek community. You find me in meetings with the village OC, where I am part of that group, where we have great fun and we actually do have plenty to celebrate. You also find me having coffee with coffee clubs within our village, where I get a chance to discuss current affairs with the very young and amazing Metro Techs that are my neighbours. You'll find me having family dinners with my brother who lives across the street in the red building. You also find me hosting weekly dinners, open dinner parties that we have at our home every week, where everyone can just bring any plate or any food that they have available. It is our opportunity to just stop, reset, and enjoy each other's company. During these dinners, I often find my daughter having meaningful discussions with our neighbours. She has many teachers around her, from an 80-year-old internationally renowned Melbourne artist to the 30-somethings in her life, a doctor in media and IA, a lawyer going through her bar exam, a senior urban designer meeting deadlines for huge environmental projects in Victoria, a known Australian food critic, a much-loved Melbourne classical pianist who allows her to play with her piano while she's performing. A young, sustainable farmer living with his beautiful young family between the city and the country, his gorgeous partner, a former architect now studying midwifery, and their son have captivated our hearts, and they've become very central to our world. Oh, sorry, my last sentence. I guess what I'm trying to just culminate to you is that with 25 years experience as a mental health social worker working in this field, I have a very sound understanding of the impact that belonging to a place has to a person. In particular, now that we have this housing crisis. With 20% of our building allocated to social housing, this is really significant to me. And I can tell you that the residents that we have in our community that live from housing commissions are people that are our friends, not just our neighbours. So thank you very much for taking this into consideration.
Thank you, Sandra. Next up, we've got Asanga Ipa again coming through.
Hi all. I'd like to speak in favour again of more affordable and social housing in Brunswick. And as a resident of Merri-bek, I know council receives a lot of complaints about new housing, but I think that development is excellent and there's clear support that exists for this. So it will provide between 42 and 56 social housing new dwellings as part of a 280 dwelling proposal. So that's significantly increasing the amount of housing, and the suburb has a great amount of competition for housing and desperately does need more housing. Market housing in of itself would meet some of this demand, but social housing is crucial and will be of great benefit to the community. In addition, it will provide retail tenancies that will provide jobs and amenity to the community. Another increase to amenity for the community will be the provision of 1,200 square metres of open space along the upfield bike path. So I want to make clear it's not a choice between existing residents and new ones. We can have more housing and increased neighbourhood amenity and open space within the proposal, which I think is a real win-win. I think it's really crucial that affordable housing is not denied because we're scared of going over 6 stories in an area where there are already multiple buildings taller than that. And I don't think the aesthetic amenity impacts of adding an extra story, I think they're far outweighed by the amenity benefits for people who get to live in social housing designed by an award-winning not-for-profit developer. And I urge Council not to go against the zone officer's advice that the height, form, and setbacks are acceptable, and instead take the opportunity to allow dozens of new social dwellings to be built and benefit both the people who live in them and the wider community. This council has laudably signalled that it wants to take housing affordability seriously, looking to build affordable housing on council-owned property in Coburg, and reviewing its options to regulate short-stay accommodation. This is an easy opportunity here before you to improve the housing situation in Merri-bek by merely allowing others to build social housing without council having to go to any trouble of its own. I think to do otherwise would be to act as a roadblock in the housing crisis, and I think it would be appeasing relatively trivial concerns which are being deemed acceptable by officers and in compliance. So in my view, approving the officer's recommendation is an easy choice. That will benefit the community, both those living outside development and most significantly have a huge impact for the new residents. So please vote in favour of increasing housing and in particular social housing, not reducing or banning it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And next up, we've got Jacob Vernon, who is here in person.
G'day. I'm a tenant in the Nightingale Village as well, and I just wanted to talk about my experience there. I joined through Housing Choices. I've been there for just over a year now, and it's been life-changing. So I grew up in poverty. I grew up on a farm in Queensland, limes and avocados. Neither of my parents had finished high school, and I really struggled through high school as well. And in the decade since, I've sort of had a series of just unstable accommodations and struggled to find where I want to be going in life. And part of that is because of the instability of my accommodation. So it's been life-changing to be having social housing where I'm not stressing about where I'm going to be living in a couple of months. Like I've lived in 13 different share houses in the decade since I moved out of home, and now with the security that social housing provides and the wonderful community in Nightingale, I'm sort of in a position where I can really focus on tackling the bigger challenges in my life than just the daily stresses of getting by and struggling through poverty. So it just really gives me a lot of hope about moving forward in the future and sort of becoming the person who I can look up to in a way that I didn't really have that hope a couple of years ago. And yeah, so I'd like to encourage you to approve of the Nightingale Village 2 that's being proposed now, and to expand the opportunity that I've had to more people who would benefit, particularly in the housing crisis.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob, and thank you for sharing your story too. Thanks. So next, I'll call upon the permit applicants and the representatives of the permit applicants to make a submission. So I've got Damien Isles from Hanson Partnership, who is here in person. Thanks.
Evening, Mayor and councillors. As you know, I act for Nightingale Housing, the permit applicants, a not-for-profit developer, and the gold standard of housing in Merri-bek, or so we would agree. Tonight we're seeking the endorsement of the councillors of the officer's recommendation and the 78 conditions within the notice of decision. Tonight's really important. Last week, the Victorian government released the Victorian Housing Statement. 800,000 dwellings in 10 years is the challenge for Victoria. But the state's going to take that role away from you, Council. It's for developments in excess of 50 million and for projects that have a minimum of 10% affordable housing. They will be a matter for the state, not for you. This is an application that's a $90 million project. 15% of the dwellings will be delivered as social housing with an aspiration of 20%. It is a matter tonight that we're looking for the councillors to support this application and support the community of Nightingale. I want to use my time to make 6 key statements. The first is the community benefit that is being offered with this application. The provision of over 1,200 square metres of publicly accessible open space along the upfield rail corridor. Condition 59 of the Notice of Decision looks to secure that with a 173 agreement on title, giving the community 365 days of access, 24 hours a day. This needs to be seen in light of the reciprocal offer of the neighbour, Hines, who also delivered 1,200 square metres of publicly accessible open space along the rail corridor. In total, over 2,500 square metres of open space for green landscape, deep soil planting. Absolutely, Councillor Tapagnos, this will address the urban heat island effect. The second issue is the design excellence. 5 architects dealing with the scale of development, architects from Melbourne and Sydney, managing a building that sits between 8 stories delivered by Nightingale Village and 9 stories approved by Council 2 months ago. We meet DDO 18, street wall. We deliver 2,500 square metres of communal open space, and within the east and west setbacks, there's deep soil planting for trees. In terms of ESD, a 7.6 star NatHERS rating, 80% best score, fully electric building, no gas, and a 100 kilowatt system that's shared between the community. 15% housing affordability secured by a 173 agreement.
You're able to race through the rest of your points that you wanted to make.
Car share provision within a basement within Merri-bek, 15 vehicles, 4 of which will be used for loading within the first 2 months, an additional loading space within the basement on site. And in terms of the response to the objectors, it's well articulated by the officers. Tonight we really want your support and we look forward to receiving that, hopefully in a few minutes. Thanks very much for your time.
Great. Thank you, Damien. Next up, we've got Dan McKenna from Nightingale Housing here in person.
Hi everyone. Thanks very much for your time tonight. So my name is Dan McKenna. I'm the CEO of Nightingale Housing. We're a not-for-profit development company that builds sustainable, community-focused buildings. In addition to leading our team, I'm also a Nightingale resident. I live in one of our buildings with my partner, our 1-year-old daughter, and we've got another one on the way. Like nearly half of our staff, I'm deeply embedded within the communities that we build. And my connection to this broader area goes a long way back. My mum's from Glenroy, my dad's from Brunswick, my grandparents and great-grandparents before them all called Brunswick home. Like everybody here tonight, I care deeply about this area and what its future looks like. The project we're here for brings so many things to Merri-bek, but to keep it brief, the 3 things I'm especially proud of: our significant allocation to affordable housing. We don't need to bang on about the housing crisis. We all understand what our cities need, but we think that affordable housing should be embedded within our communities and not pushed into isolated areas. We've shown this is possible through so many of our Nightingale projects. It's such a simple and powerful step and is changing people's lives right now. Many of my neighbours have the most incredible stories, and this is something we need to keep fighting for. Secondly, we want to reduce the cost of living pressures on our residents. We've now delivered a number of projects across the country and are able to show how pulling together as communities can significantly reduce ongoing costs, reducing needs for heating and cooling, sharing services, sharing energy networks, and deliberately siting our project in areas close to public transport and to existing amenities. This project is no different. In our Hope Street project, we have the largest car share hub in Merri-bek, which importantly is not just for our residents, but it's available to anybody in the city. We talk openly with our residents about all of the costs on our projects, and the overwhelming feedback from people is cost is everything right now. The final point from me is the 1,500 square metre linear park, which will run from Hope Street right through to Ballarat Street. This is roughly the same size as Merri-bek Park, probably the most popular park in all of Merri-bek. This is a game changer for the area, and once again, it's accessible for the whole community, for the whole suburb to use. This project has a number of bigger homes for families, and access to green space like this is pivotal. Again, this is something we're doing because we think we should be doing it. And to summarise, we've worked with council officers for well over a year on this project and engaged with the broader community on what we're trying to achieve. We think this sort of project is exactly what our cities need right now: good quality, medium density homes in diverse, supportive communities. And these are the exact sites that they need to be happening on. I strongly urge you to support this project tonight and many more like it into the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dan. And finally, we've got James Henry from Housing Choices Australia, who will be joining us online. Great. James, can you hear me? Oh.
I can hear you, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep, all good. So you've got 3 minutes.
Okay, apologies for not being there today. I'm James Henry, the General Manager of Property Development at Housing Choices, a registered community housing association. And I'd just like to make 3 quick points. We're really proud and pleased to be have an enduring partnership with Nightingale Housing. We've delivered over 6 projects where we've owned and acquired housing that will be retained for social and affordable housing and people with a disability into the long term in a regulated environment. I think to date there's 79 houses that we've acquired, and we do this because we understand the principles and share the principles that Nightingale Housing do. I think that what their leaders, and Merri-bek should be very proud and pleased with the role that Nightingale plays in the development space, leaders in sustainability, in community, and we respect and want to be part of that into the future. On this specific proposal, it again is a development of significant scale, but they've embedded and partnered with us and engaged with us over a long period of time in how the feasibility of social and affordable housing will work. And we have regular meetings with them and are pleased to commit, everyone would be aware of the new funding pathways that are coming about. Subsidised housing requires a subsidy, and we play right across that subsidised housing spectrum. And with the passing of the HAF and the recent announcements of the Victorian State Government, we're extremely confident that we can be able to acquire the funding to support providing housing into the long term in this site. I'd just like to talk to a few of the ways that we have participated with Nightingale Housing. We've always negotiated discount purchase prices. We've also played a role as a funder of housing, so invested in the development itself. And most recently, we're very pleased to be part of the first carbon neutral housing development in South Australia, where we played a very active role in the development of that, and that was for social and affordable housing and won an award in that state. I can't speak highly enough of Nightingale Housing, and I think that the planning provisions that have been put forward here, and I haven't heard the previous presentations, and I understand I'm the last speaker on a very long night, are appropriate to allow us to participate and to ensure that more housing is delivered for people who need it in Merri-bek. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, James. I'll see if there are any other people in attendance in the gallery tonight who wish to speak to this item. Yep, we've got another one come through. Great. And what was your name? Sorry.
Sorry, James, and I wish to speak in support, and I'm very sorry because it was a very generous offer to speak at the end of this long night.
No.
But firstly, I'd like to say, as a resident, and it might be a bit rambly, so I'll try and be quick. As a resident, I'd like to firstly acknowledge how proud I am to be in this progressive area, and I believe that the proactivity of the council and councillors is just such a testament to that. And if there's no other utility to my comments, tonight because there's been a clear sea of support. I'd just like to thank Councillor Bolton for her recent organisation of the Accessible Transport Rally. I'm not from here originally. I'm from a suburban area with very little community, very little development and very little inclusivity. And I think the social fabric of Merri-bek should be the envy of Australia. And I think it's a testament to Council that what's in consideration tonight asks us to consider an innovative model of sustainable development and how it will affect our residents. But I must personally say, I do feel like many of the things we've heard tonight pale in comparison for the real need for housing in this state, especially social, some of which we've heard tonight, even though I know councillors would like a resolution to both. But I would like to second the words said by Jonathan O'Brien and many others tonight. I don't think it should also be lost that tonight we've considered a matter relating to local congestion and traffic surrounding schools, and we've heard about parking and some very serious concerns. But before you now is a consideration of a development model which provides a preferable alternative to car-centric development and the supply glut of car parking we are so used to. And I think this type of development is a great step to fixing many of our transport problems. Nightingale has proven by many measures its ability to develop the type of great housing this city desperately needs, and I believe we should let them do it again. And I acknowledge the views of the objectors, and I hope a resolution can be reached. But I think this is a project many people in Brunswick and Merri-bek would be proud to live near, yes, in their backyard. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Great, thank you, James. So, councillors, do any of you have any questions for, for the applicant or for officers? Councillor Bolton? Thanks.
I have a question for either the applicant or the officers.
All right, we'll ask it and we'll see.
So basically, it's regarding one of the comments that was made by a resident of one of the Nightingale projects earlier about emergency services and access for emergency services during fires, etc. In fact, it was made by the first two objectors, who are both Nightingale residents, and I couldn't find the reference. That's why I was flicking back and forth in the agenda. I couldn't see the reference to it, and that is a worry to me. So, you know, one was talking about the reference in the agenda and the other one was about the real experience of an actual fire.
Yes, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Bolton. Your question actually was raised by the officer as part of the assessment of the application. In terms of fire services, there is a series of integrated fire hydrants throughout the development. So the MFB is able to arrive at the frontage of the site, connect in, and the entirety of the development is accessible.
Thanks. All right, Damien?
Yes. The fire truck doesn't need to drive onto the site down to where the fire is occurring. It can arrive at the frontage of the site, connect into the fire hydrants closest to the street, and they're integrated throughout the development to allow access for the fire services. So it's absolutely accessible for emergency services from the frontage to the rear of the site.
Great, thanks. Yep. Thank you, Damien, and thank you, Councillor Bolton. Are there any other questions this evening? Nope. All right. Thanks, Damien. Oh no. Okay. All right. Councillor Tapanos, you were definitely last. So no. You were definitely last. That one I did see. So Councillor Bolton, Councillor Conlon, sorry. What motion do you have?
I'd like to circulate my alternative.
No.
I'd like to circulate the alternative recommendation.
All right. So we'll firstly see what this is, so we can all actually understand it and see if you've got a seconder for it.
Yep. So I can outline it first. So my alternative recommendation seeks to reduce the height of the rear part of building A to 7 stories down from the proposed 8, and buildings B to E down to 7 stories from the proposed 8 to 9, and also to have some clearer conditions around the affordable housing provision.
Okay. Do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Bolton to second. All right, Councillor Conlon as the mover.
Thank you. So while I agree there are a lot of good aspects to this proposal, asking council to allow for a doubling of the height limit is a big ask. As I've said before, loose planning controls encourage land speculation, which increases land values which then worsens the housing crisis. And there's decades of empirical evidence that proves this. I'm not comfortable with giving away free floor space for nothing. If developers want council to give it concessions, the developer must, in my view, provide very clear, tangible, measurable public benefits in exchange for those concessions. This acts like a developer tax, as it requires the developer to provide public benefits in exchange for exceeding the planning controls. The public benefits proposed as part of this application are a new linear park and some affordable housing. So the question for me in this case is, are the proposed public benefits meaningful and beneficial to the community? The public park is great and I strongly welcome this. But I do also note that a similar planning proposal at the July planning meeting for 10 Ballarat Street, Brunswick, the developer also offered a public park next to the upfield shared park. But this developer provided the park by seeking only one additional storey from the original permit, whereas this proposal seeks up to 4 additional storeys. So the proposed park is great, but in itself is not enough to justify a significant exceeding of the preferred height limit. On the affordable housing component, the developer is proposing 42 affordable housing units to be sold to a registered housing provider at 90% market rate. But affordable housing isn't defined, and the length of time that the units will be affordable for is only 20 years. So I'm not, if I'm to support this proposal, I'd like to see stronger conditions around, especially around the affordable housing, to ensure more people can enjoy the benefits of social housing, such as the speakers who have come here tonight and articulated their stories. And thank you for sharing those stories. So my alternative recommendation, in addition to reducing some of those heights, in exchange for council giving to the developer up to 2 additional floors, I propose that the affordable housing units be made available to people specifically on low incomes and in perpetuity, and not the proposed 20 years, which is in the current proposal.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Bolton? Okay, great. Do we have a speaker against this motion? Councillor Riley? Just unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks. It's interesting that we're back here again when you're getting a very highly proposed, well thought out proposal for 15 to 20% social housing, the largest piece of open space I think I've ever seen offered in any sort of contribution, and to think that that's not being claimed as not being generous or satisfactory seems to me to be undervaluing the open space and undervaluing the outcomes that we're getting on other applications like the one just before this, which didn't offer us any. Didn't hear much of a noise about that there, but we're hearing it about this when we're getting quite a... Well, no, I'm not saying you didn't make a noise, but it wasn't something that was being made a big stance upon, whereas this is, clearly drawing a line. The site, this application, while it is exceeding, the preferred height limits, they're not prescriptive. They are not showing up on Hope Street. Most of the setbacks on the east and west sides are enabling deep soil planting, and the larger, the higher sites are way to the centre of the site, which will be less obvious from the streets at least. The reduced parking is permissible. I know this is often an argument when these come up, but we've heard a lot of the case for that tonight, and there's also another provision for green travel and getting people to pay a $500 levy if they don't commit to that. That's stipulated in there. With the affordable housing, this kind of thing should be coming from all of the large large-scale, developments of this site. And Dan Andrews having resigned today, one of the shame in his leadership as Premier was that he could have included inclusionary zoning for larger developments. Unfortunately, that's never been seen through, and we could be demanding and having this demanded of all developments of large scale like this, but this one's actually being offered to us. To put that at risk with these kind of provisions that are being proposed tonight seems to me to really underscore the efforts that have gone to here for a non-profit organisation. This has got high ESD, it's providing accessible dwellings, there's loading spaces for those who seem to, to make that, and we've heard applicants or presenters tonight concerned about that in other areas, but that won't be an issue here. So, yeah, really concerned that if this fails, I'll be moving the officer recommendation as it is. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Councillor Riley.
Just a question, Mayor.
Question?
Yeah, just a question. I'm just thinking there might be some points of agreement and disagreement on my alternative recommendation. So just wondering if we can vote on the items individually, separately.
So it's a plan. Actually, I'll get governance advice, but I believe because it's a planning permit, can we vote on them line by line? I don't know, because there's like 78 conditions. Actually, it's my discretion as well. So no, I'm going to say that we vote on this as a whole. So, all right. Was there any other question on that? No. Okay, a speaker in favour? Oh.
Just in the interest of time, can I suggest that we have one debate and speakers speak either for the officer recommendation or the motion, and then after we just put them concurrently to avoid two debates?
We'll see how this one goes first, and yeah, we'll gauge from there in the interest of time. So now I'm going to ask for a speaker in favour of this alternative motion. Yeah, Councillor Bolton, just unmute yourself. Thanks.
I appreciate the comments that have been made about some of the residents who are residents in the social housing on this site, and I think that is an example of how everyone needs permanent, secure housing, and it's very sad that the state government's housing statement last week is going to result in the demolition of the 44 public housing towers, because public housing is the only guarantee of long-term, permanent, secure housing. The community housing does fill a little bit of a gap, but the key thing is public housing. And I think, there are many good features of the Nightingale developments as a whole, and this one in particular. But I also think that developments have to be right in their context, and they have to actually work. And we've actually heard from 2 residents of Nightingale where there are some issues which need to be resolved with some of the developments. I understand, and my central issue is feeling that the doubling of the height limit, I think, is just a bridge too far. If it was just 1 story over the height limit, I could maybe vote for this with confidence, but a doubling of the height, I think height limits need to mean something, or else the council should go to the community and get the permission of the community to increase all the height limits up to 9 stories. I think that the council continuing to grant permits over the height limit is leading to what they call in council reports as being emerging new heights, which are above the actual discretionary height limits in council structure plans. I think it is good what Nightingale's proposing in terms of increased space for the linear park, but I also do note the comments that have been made by residents, currently existing residents, about actual experience of the current linear park. So hopefully this is better than what the existence is at the moment. So I'm supporting this motion because I think there does need to be a debate in council about the heights in particular, but I also definitely support the proposal around affordable housing being in perpetuity, and I would have moved that as an amendment to the last
Thanks.
application we just considered if it wasn't for it being subject to a consent order in VCAT.
Thanks, Councillor Bolton.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Can we just get clarity about this notion of in perpetuity? Where's that? Is that appearing on the screen?
So that's part of Councillor Conlon's alternative.
Is it further down in the... Thank you. I can look for it.
That's where it is. Okay. So now I'll see if we've got a speaker against this motion. Councillor Tapanos.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I'm speaking against this motion and in favour of the officer's recommendation if this motion fails. This application is of a significant height, that's undoubtable, but it still fits within the envelope of what we approved previously. And it was mentioned by a representative of the applicant, and I think that collaboration to ensure that similar type of envelopes, heights, setbacks, and this granting of this linear park was really well done, because the combined effort means that the community does get a significant piece of open space, which will hopefully one day, when elevated rail becomes reality, be part of a broader linear park that connects pretty much Royal Park right through to Coburg, and that is a great asset. And this parcel, I would say small, but very significant, is part of that broader vision. So I think that is fantastic. When we talk about heights, we also have a look at the negative impact of heights from looking at overshadowing and looking at setbacks to mediate some of that. And that's been done in this application and been done well. So there is no reason to decrease heights. What we should be doing is looking at increasing setbacks, and that is exactly what this application has done. So it gets ticks on that front. As far as design elements, I think that's all fantastic. I mean, as a long-term council, I've seen in many respects the evolution of the Nightingale model from the Commons right through to this one here today. And I think that there's been a lot of learnings along the way and a lot of improvements, particularly around design elements. And I'm very pleased to see that in this application, there are some car parking spots, a recognition that we need loading bays. And I think that that's important, that we need car share, and I think that's important. Where previously it was zero, now we have something here. A minimum amount that does at least meet that requirement of people needing a loading bay, people needing a car share access. So I think when you really have a look at this decision, you need to think about this with in conjunction with the decision we made a few months ago about the property just behind it, and make a realisation that this application is a very good one. It goes a long way, and we all heard about it, so I don't want to talk about affordable housing anymore because it's been said numerous times, but it goes a long way towards all of our objectives. And I'm disappointed that the previous applicants' representatives are not here anymore, because I was really hoping that they would see this and see that they should have also offered something around open space as well. I think that was disappointing in the previous application. But getting back to this one,
Thanks.
There's absolutely no reason to reject this, and as it is in the officer's recommendation, it should be approved.
Thanks, Councillor Tapanos. Are there any other speakers in favour of this alternative motion? Any other speakers against it? Councillor Pulford?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I speak against this alternate and would be in favour of the officer recommendation. Yeah, as it's been noted tonight by a number of people, we are in a housing crisis, and building more homes is a way to help address the housing crisis. And our city needs more homes for people to live in. This would build more homes in our city, 282 dwellings, 36 studio apartments, 88 one-bedders, 144 two-bedders, and 14 three-bedders. It does include minimum 15% social housing, which is a minimum of 42 affordable housing dwellings, could be up to 20%. We heard tonight from Tiffany and Jacob about the security and opportunities that previous projects by this developer have enabled them, the opportunities it's provided them and Tiffany's family as well, and how they support this proposal before us this evening because it would allow others to have the similar opportunities for security and safety and, you know, chance to kind of build on their lives from there. Everybody needs and everybody has a right to a safe home. Beyond that, this is the kind of development that we want in our city. It increases density right next to public transport in an activity centre. It does provide open space in this dense part of our city, 1,500 square metres, which the applicant doesn't need to provide, so we should claim that as a win. Sustainability-wise, it's got a good star rating. It's fossil fuel free and has 100 kilowatts of solar, and 50% of the dwellings should be able to be accessible for people, which is also important. As councils, we have to be aware of the context we're making decisions in with the proposed changes to the planning system announced by the Victorian government last week. We also have to be aware of the limits of our power as decision makers in planning. I fear that some councillors have not learned from our previous experiences. 8 Florence Street, one of the previous proposals put forward by this applicant, is currently before VCAT when council, after council decided to reduce the number of floors or stories. The increased costs from both going to VCAT and the 7-month delay in timing has meant the applicant has cancelled their voluntary commitment for affordable housing from that proposed development. So by trying to pursue you know, the ultimate in this situation, which I can understand why councils want to pursue that, we have to be aware of the limits of our decision-making in this area. And, you know, I think locking off stories here risks losing the affordable housing provision. So as I said, this is the kind of development we should be pursuing for our community. We should take this as a win, not risk losing the good outcomes that applicants put forward and the officers have negotiated within the limits of the planning system.
Thanks, Councillor Pulford. I'll see if there are any speakers in favour of this alternative motion. If not, any other speakers against this motion? I might also then chime in on this one too, and just on a few key areas and issues that people have raised in debate. So specifically on the height, it was said that this is, you know, double the height limit and 3 to 4 stories higher than other approvals in the area. But I just want to specify for make it clear, for councillors, that this is like the same overall height as the other buildings that have been approved in the area. So I think that's really important when we're talking about overall height and the impact that it has on overshadowing and how much you can see it from the street. This is actually in keeping with things that have already been built, things that we've already approved in that area. And it has actually been negotiated down from 10 stories to 9 stories, which I think is an important part of that negotiation process between the applicant and council officers. On the park and the open space, it's been well explained that this doesn't actually have to be provided at all, and that this is being done to provide that broader public benefit that will link up with the other open space that Councillor Tapanos referenced, and will also link up with the upfield, you know, with that upfield corridor once that level crossing removal project happens. So this is something that isn't just about this particular block. This is about that broader precinct and trying to link up and create open and accessible public space that is being secured through a Section 173 agreement. And we know through previous encounters with this particular applicant that when these Section 173s are signed off on, they're followed through on. This isn't the case where we have perhaps some others who will promise everything and then not deliver. This is not the situation that we have here based off of this applicant's track record. And I think that's something that's really important to acknowledge. On the affordable housing, so this is about 15 to 20% promised affordable housing. Just to remind councillors, on the Pentridge one that we just approved without really much debate at all on that, that one was an offer of 3 to 5% affordable housing. And so when you have this, which is 15 to 20%, we have residents living in these social housing homes who are basically imploring us to build more so that other people can be offered the same opportunities as them. when we turn around and say that this isn't good enough, but we've just approved something that was far less, nowhere near as good as what this offer is, and when we're working in a system that actually means that developers have to provide nothing, and we're working within a state context where they can lower the thresholds for calling in planning applications with the affordable housing provided. It's just bizarre to me that we would be saying, actually, we've got a housing crisis, we need more housing, we all know that we've got problems with public housing and we shouldn't be demolishing them. But when we've got a proposal here that doesn't, I guess, cost us and doesn't make it very difficult for us, I don't understand why we would be turning that down. So for me, that's like really the biggest thing on that front, is that this is a good proposal. It meets all of our requirements with environmental outcomes, and we've got a good track record with this applicant. So I implore councillors to vote against this alternative and to vote for the officer recommendation. And now I'll see if there's any other speakers in debate, but if not, we'll go back to Councillor Conlon for his right of reply.
Thanks. Thank you. I do think my motion is actually a sensible compromise. As has been clearly outlined tonight, the proposal is for 4 stories above the preferred height limit, which in the context of our council is a significant exceedance of the preferred height controls. So my motion seeks for up to 2 stories above the preferred height limit. So we're still providing a significant concession to the developer as part of this proposal. And I think it is also important to note that the park that was provided as part of the previous application at 10 Ballarat Street, the developer was seeking 1 additional floor in exchange for that significant public benefit. So I think it is possible to provide public benefit without such significant exceedances of council's planning controls. And so, like I said, I'm happy to support this proposal if the concessions provided by council in the form of extra floor space are proportionate to the public good. And so that's why I propose some of these concessions. I want some more conditions around the social housing so that, we heard tonight how affordable, secure housing transforms people's lives. And that, there was multiple people who told us that tonight. And my concern that is, while the proposal proposes some affordable housing, which is great, it's only proposed to be affordable for 20 years. After that period, it'll revert back to private ownership. So I would like some much more clear conditions around that social housing, which is why I've suggested that it be provided in perpetuity and also for people on low incomes. So my position is that if the building's going to be there forever, so should the social housing. And in terms of the low income provision, so my understanding of the housing system, it's particularly the community housing system, is that it tends to favour middle to higher income people rather than people on low incomes. So again, low income people are in the most need of affordable housing given in the housing crisis. So I think that we should be making sure that the affordable housing that's provided as part of this application is for the most needy.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. So we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour of this alternative motion? Got 1, 2. All those against this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2 abstentions. Okay, so that is lost. And so I believe, Councillor Riley, you had foreshadowed the officer recommendation.
I'll move that recommendation, thanks.
Yep. And Councillor Tapanos to second it. Did you want to speak to that, or have we had sufficient debate this evening?
Well, there's been sufficient debate on my part. I'm not sure whether any other councillors wish to, but yeah.
All right, so you'll reserve your right for now. Councillor Tapanos, you'll reserve that. Any speakers against this motion?
I've got an amendment, yeah. It's a one amendment which I've circulated.
All right,
should be a pretty clear, simple one, I think.
All right, so that email was sent at 9:08. Condition 58D and 59A to provide that the affordable dwellings must be retained for low-income households in perpetuity. Now, in terms of process, does that have to be moved as an alternative, or is that an amendment because it's the planning permit? It's an amendment. An amendment. All right, cool. We'll just go first
Yeah,
to the
I'm
mover.
not, you know, I would implore councillors to come to our briefings and not do these things at the last minute. I haven't had any legal advice about this and I'm not accepting it. I'm sorry. We haven't got any advice on this. I like the sentiment of it, but I haven't been advised, so I'm not accepting it.
Thanks, Councillor Riley. So Councillor Bolton has indicated, though, that she would second this. So, Councillor Conlon, do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Well, really, I think it is quite simple in that I'm wanting to make sure that there is some clear conditions around the affordable housing component. You know, I actually am happy to declare this, and I will be declaring that I met with someone who works in the the not-for-profit housing sector, and to gain further understanding of the issue of affordable housing. And even this person, who's very prominent in the industry, has significant concerns about how affordable housing is being provided, particularly through the planning system, in that there is very few mechanisms to ensure that it's being enforced. Council doesn't send officers to every single dwelling after they're built to check the income statements of the new dwellings, the turnover of those people. The industry is pretty much unregulated, and it's there's very vague definitions, and there's a lot of issues around the transparency about how the whole housing system works. And that's just not my opinion. I've been talking and researching this issue quite a lot. So while I don't think that council has the capacity to fully enforce all of these provisions, I think we at least need to have some legally robust definitions and specified outcomes of what we're trying to achieve. Otherwise, there's really no way to make sure that this is going to be delivered.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. Now, I know we don't normally do this, but can I just ask the applicants if that amendment would be acceptable to them? Just, we operate in a system where at VCAT, applicants don't have to follow through on any voluntary offers. So I just wanted to check that so we're fully aware if they would support it or not, and aware of if it would go to VCAT. Yeah, sorry. Okay, I know I've put you on the spot. Don't worry about it. Sorry, I've put you on the spot. But I just thought I'd put it out there. Can I just hold on a sec, just because we've got Councillor Bolton as the seconder. Do you wish to? All right, you'll reserve your right, Councillor Tapanos. Yep. Cool.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Look, I really agree with the sentiments of what this amendment is trying to do, and I do believe there is an issue out there more broadly about the tenure of affordable housing. But Councillor Conlon might be right that we as council don't have the complete ability and resources to be able to door knock everyone every year and make sure that they are complying. But the issue probably needs to be tackled at another level of government if that's the objective. I think this motion will not resolve that issue, if this amendment will not resolve that issue tonight. But nor do I think it is desirable, because we also, we heard about the crisis in housing, we heard about a whole range of issues, but sometimes you also need to consider that it's actually difficult to get these projects over the line financially. There are financial considerations, there are investors. The financial model is built around a particular program. And we are, as we heard tonight, talking about investment from super funds. So potentially what you might be doing is trying to achieve a greater good by having it in perpetuity for some residents who might be in these apartments, but you could actually be causing greater detriment and greater harm to average working Australians who have invested in this super, who probably earn around $60,000 a year, who will not get the return because of these investments potentially having last-minute amendments like this tonight. So there are those kind of consequences that we could be trying to resolve one issue, but causing other issues down the track, putting in jeopardy things like the super funds returns and contributions, and the ability for a development such as this to actually get up financially. So I rather, and I don't think it's appropriate to actually throw something like this at the last minute here tonight. I hear the sentiment, I hear where you're coming from. I think it's a broader issue. It's not specific to this application. It needs to be tackled with legislation at a broader level of government, and I don't think this amendment today is fair or warranted for this application.
Thanks, Councillor Tapanos. Any other speakers in favour of this amendment? Councillor Bolton.
I understand that affordable housing isn't great to be dealt with through the planning scheme, but unfortunately, state governments all over Australia, as they get rid of public housing, are leaving it to the market to provide affordable housing. And a lot of housing association housing is of time limited, and really for affordable housing to be genuine, it actually has to be affordable forever, and that's the basis on which public housing used to operate. It was your dwelling forever, so that you didn't have to move unless, there was some reason you wanted to move, but you had permanent secure housing forever. Whereas with many of the housing associations, it's not forever. And one of the reasons why it is appropriate to deal with an amendment like this is because a lot of developers, I'm not saying this particular developer, but a lot of other developers are using affordable housing as a way to get increased height over the line. I don't think that is the reason why affordable housing has been included in this particular development, but I think a lot of other developers, that's what they do. And so it is legitimate for us to discuss this issue. And in fact, I was planning to move an amendment like this around the Pentridge Boulevard application, which the Mayor just commented on, but I was told that I wasn't able to because that wasn't, it was already in train. It was with a housing association already from when the permit was originally granted many years ago. So I wasn't able to do that, and I've moved similar amendments in the past. So I think if we're genuine about affordable housing, we're actually obligated to pass amendments like this with every application, which includes affordable housing, not just this one, but every single one that comes before the council.
Thanks, Councillor Bolton. Any other speakers against? I see Councillor Pulford with his hand up. We might try and wrap up debate on this amendment soon.
Yeah, thanks. Look, I agree with a lot of Councillor Tapanos's comments. In our role in this meeting, we are decision makers under the planning, in the planning system. This isn't the time for our advocacy efforts because it doesn't work like that. I think at council meetings, we should continue to pass motions and advocate for public housing and more social and affordable housing, but we can't have those fights through the planning scheme if we want better outcomes and in our city in terms of development, and if we want more houses in our city. So I just really caution councillors on trying to force this, although I agree with what it's trying to achieve, trying to force it through this planning system when, like on 8 Florence Street, the applicant could go to VCAT and then remove the affordable housing. So we'd actually see us lose affordable housing if we tried to create more affordable housing here, I fear. Anyway, that's all I'll say.
Thanks, Councillor Pulford. Councillor Conlon, do you wish to exercise your right of reply?
I just have not heard very convincing arguments for a legally robust condition that ensures that what we're trying to achieve is written down.
All right, okay, thanks. Thanks, Councillor Conlon. So we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour of this amendment? All those against this amendment? And then 2 abstentions, they also count as against, so that has been lost. And we'll go...
Division?
Yep, so we'll get a division on that one. So all those in favour were Councillor Conlon and Councillor Bolton. All those against were Councillor Yildiz, Councillor Riley, Councillor Tapanos, myself, Councillor Pulford, and the 2 abstentions were Councillor Pavlidis and Councillor Davidson. And now we'll go back to the officer recommendation. And so, sorry, we've had a lot of notes on this one. So, Councillor Riley, did you end up speaking? No, you both reserved your right. So I'll see if there's a speaker against this officer recommendation. Is there against this recommendation? Yep, Councillor Conlon.
Yes. So I'm against this officer recommendation since my amendment has not been supported. So again, I guess I'm really pushing this because I want more affordable housing for the people, who have come here tonight and shared their stories about what the transformative experience of having social housing or living in social or affordable housing has been for them. The permit condition that we've got in front of us means that the social housing as part of this permit will be for only 20 years. I think a lot of the people here who came tonight are pretty young, and 20 years is going to be, I assume you're going to live for longer than 20 years. So without my amendment, there aren't a lot of guarantees after that 20 years. Maybe there might be, you might have some kind of good negotiated outcome with Nightingale, or who, I don't know how that will work after that 20-year period expires. But so I'm just really disappointed. I'm kind of surprised that council isn't willing to sort of just make it clear in a permanent condition what we're trying to achieve. So for that reason, I can't support this application.
Thanks, Councillor Conlon. Any speakers in favour of this officer recommendation? Councillor Pulford.
Yeah, I'll just say if councillors want more affordable housing in our community, they should vote for more affordable housing in our community by voting for this application tonight.
Thanks, Councillor Pulford. That was a record of 10 seconds. So, any speakers against this motion? Any other speakers in favour of this motion? No? All right, we'll put that one to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? And 2 abstentions. All right, so that has been carried, and we'll get a division on that one. So those in favour were Councillor Yildiz, Councillor Riley, Councillor Tapanos, myself, and Councillor Pulford. Against was Councillor Conlon. Sorry, Councillor Bolton, which... Sorry, I did skip your hand. Yep, okay, sorry, and including Councillor Bolton in the ones who voted for it, and then Councillor Pavlidis and Councillor Davidson as abstentions for tonight. So is that on that one? And then I'll ask Vida if you're please able to outline the next steps.
Thank you, Mayor. So Council has just determined to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the development proposed at 17 to 19 Hope Street, and that's subject to the conditions contained within the officer recommendation. So following the issue of the notice of decision, both the applicant and objector parties will receive a copy, and objectors will have 28 days to appeal the decision at the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. In the event that no appeal is lodged, a planning permit will be issued, and the applicant has 60 days from that date to appeal any conditions on the permit. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Vida. And with that, our meeting is closed tonight at 9:30 p.m. Thanks, everyone.